also a new normal very soon. And today, one of the flagship event of Kerala Management Association. Probably the major event is Management Convention. Thereafter, we will have a MSME event, Digital Summit, CSR event, and so many other events which we normally organize every year. Last year, as she said, we had a full day event. And this year we are organizing only for a few hours, and we will have a very good, excellent speakers and panelists arranged for this event. And today to this particular program, our chief guest is Mr. Mohammad Safrala IAS. He was kind enough to inaugurate this program and address this program. And I am welcoming him for this particular event. And we have two keynote speakers. The first is actually Mr. Mitesh Agarwal. Mitesh Agarwal is CTO of Google India with rich experience in digital journey. He is also agreed to address digital and management community of state of Kerala. And I am welcoming him for this event. The second speaker is Mr. Ajit Menon, Chief Security Officer of TCS. And along with this particular digital journey, cyber security, information security is also a major topic. Without that, we may not be able to configure and create a journey for digitization. So in that context, Mr. Ajit Menon will address us and give his thoughts, his experience, very rich, experienced person, Mr. Ajit Menon. And I am welcoming Mr. Ajit Menon to this event. And we have Mr. Rajiv Prakash. Rajiv Prakash is CEO of Desh Pandey Startups. And he was former CEO of Future Groups India. And he is even wearing multiple hats. Today, he is also advisor to He is also advisor to the digital and innovation setup of future groups. And he is also on the board of many corporates. And I am welcoming Mr. Rajiv Prakash to this event on behalf of KMA. And we have an eminent panelist moderated by Dr. Saji Gopinath, Vice Chancellor, Kerala University for Digital Sciences, Innovation and Technology. There is no need to introduce Dr. Saji Gopinath to this KMA or for that matter to Kerala. And I am welcoming you, Dr. Saji Gopinath, to this event. And we have an extremely important educationist, Dr. Kunjaria P Isak. Dr. Kunjaria P Isak is Director General of SIME, and he was former Vice Chancellor of APJ Abdul Kalam Technology University. And his contribution to this management as well as the students in the state is eminent, and his time is actually precious. And I am welcoming you, sir, for this event. We have Anuradha Shenoy. Anuradha Shenoy is from BPCL. She is DGM Digital BPCL. You know, BPCL, such a big organization, how transforming to the digital is also an interesting topic for us. So she agreed to attend as a panelist, and I am welcoming her for this event. We have Mr. Tapan Raiguru. Tapan Raiguru is our important guest. He is taking over from Dr. Saji Gopinath, Kerala Startup Mission, and he is the CEO of Kerala Startup Mission. But his previous experience and also his digital journey, he will be sharing with us. He was with Infosys, and immediately, just preceding job he was in Tredence. So I am welcoming Tapan Raiguru to this event. And I am also, it is customary to welcome President. President is the chair of this event, Kerala Master Madhav Chandran. He is spearheading responsible management, and a plethora of events is organizing. I'm welcoming Mr. Madhavachandran for this function, and Honorable Secretary, Treasurer, and all management committee members, immediate past presidents, President Jibu, and past presidents, members of Management Committee of Kerala Management Association, members, students, and other all management community attending this seminar. I am welcoming each one of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I would now like to call upon Mr. R. Madhav Chandra, our president, to take on the stage for the presidential address. Mr. Madhav is the founder and mentor of Cyberland and LinkNet group of companies.
The chief guest of this year's KMA Annual Digital Summit, Mr. Muhammad Y. Safrala, IAS, Secretary to the Department of Electronics and Information Technology to the Government of India. Distinguished speakers who are going to address us during this summit, Mr. Mitesh Agarwal, Chief Technology Officer of Google India, Mr. Ajit Menon, CSO at TCS, Dr. Saji Gobinath, our own MC member and the Vice Chancellor of the Kerala University of Digital Science, Innovation and Technology, Mr. Tapan Rai Guru, CEO of Kerala Startup Mission, Dr. Kunjaria P Isak, Director General of Zyme Group, Ms. Anuradha Shenoy, DGM at BPCL Kochi Refinery, Mr. Rajiv Prakash, CEO of Deshpande Startups, Digital Summit Chair and KMA Vice President, Mr. A. Balakrishnan, Honorary Secretary, Mr. Jomon K. George, esteemed past presidents of KMA, Managing Committee, KMA, other LMAs, student delegates, members of the media, and other invited guests who are present here physically as well as on the online platform. A very good evening to each one of you, and welcome once again to this edition of the KMA Digital Summit. Every year, KMA organizes the Digital Summit and bring to you or met some of the leaders who are among the movers and shakers of the digital world. Every year, we focus on some of the most relevant topics of that time to be discussed and deliberated upon. This year, too, it is not different in that sense, but the events this far have been forced to go digital. In that sense, we are now completing a year of this unprecedented new era, living with the hitherto uncommon jargons, namely digital, quarantine, containment, lockdown, hotspots, new normals, work from home, and many more yet to come. What the world has faced in the last 1 year was something none could easily comprehend or be prophetic about. The changes that swept the world, touching every single entity around us, were unprecedented and, most importantly, at unimaginable pace. We are all used to changes brought in by technology in the past, redefining the usual management practices in a systematic and time-tested manner. But here, the changes brought in by the pandemic were so swift that none could predict what was in store even the very next day. Businesses and professions have changed substantially in such a short time in a manner we could not even dream of maybe a year back. The pandemic has sparked a global realization that a current way of life just does not work. It has broken our perception of what was normal and deconstructed society as we know it now. Though many businesses and industries have perished or were forced to change the manner in which they did business, the pandemic has also opened up many new avenues to sustain, survive, and to flourish. But to achieve this, one needs to be focused and be continuously remain updated and upgraded on how these changes are affecting us and our whole environment. This is where this year's KMA Digital Summit assumes much significance. The theme of the summit itself is about the new paradigms progressing digitally. It's all about digital transformation. Digital transformation is imperative for all professions and all businesses from the small to the enterprise levels. That message comes through loud and clear from seemingly every keynote, panel discussion, article, or study results related to how businesses can remain competitive and relevant in these challenging and changing times. What's not clear to many leaders is what digital transformation means. Is it just a catchy way to say moving to the cloud? What are the specific steps we need to take? Do we need to design new jobs to help us create a framework for digital transformation or hire a consulting service? What sections of our business and professional strategies need to change? And is it really worth the effort? Having said all this, is it just because of the current crisis that we are forced to go for this transformation? Well, the process was already on, but the pace at which this transformation was forced onto us is the key, and COVID has that credit for making it happen. In the wake of the pandemic, an organization's ability to adapt quickly to the disruptions in its usual processes, adapt to external pressures from our environment, and adapt to rapidly changing expectations from each of us and our organizations have become critical. This is where digital transformations are becoming one of the most important catalysts that is creating the progress in many businesses and professions and even in governments that we see around us now. The summit theme, New Paradigms Progressing Digitally, is aimed at updating each of us in the management fraternity on the way forward in this digital transformation of businesses and professions in these testing times. The galaxy of learned and experienced speakers who are about to address us will share their wealth of knowledge and expertise on this contemporary topic of relevance from various perspectives. We have the Honorable IT Secretary, who views at this topic from a government perspective, the CTO of Google, who is the leader of cloudification, to explain the journey forward with cloud computing and the other trends in technology now, the CSO at TCS, discussing the security concerns related to the transgression of old paradigms while venturing to the digital world. And we have a panel discussion led by the Vice Chancellor of the new Kerala Digital University. And the panel, we are having the CEO of the Kerala Startup Mission discussing the concerns of the startup ecosystem, a management education stalwart talking about the education standpoint, and an end user of the technology raising their concern about this digital progress. And to sum it up, in the valedictory session, we have someone in Mr. Rajiv to forecast the days and the trends ahead in technology. Well, this is the KMA way of continuing to bring you events and activities of contemporary relevance and keeping you posted on the latest developments in the domains of governance, management, leadership, technology, education, and overall development. We hope that this would be a very meaningful and useful program for each of us present here, online as well as physical. And let us now gear ourselves to get updated and educated from these stalwarts who are present with us today. Thank you so much and wish you all good health and safe times ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that very inspiring address. And I would now, we right now would have the chief guest, Mr. Mohammad Safirullah, who is a man who has donned many a hat and excelled at every one of them. But before we go to him, I would request Mr. Dinesh Thambi, past President KMA and Vice President and Delivery Head of Tata Consultancy Services Kerala, to please introduce the speaker.
Thank you. President Madhav, Digital Summit Chair ABK, past President, distinguished dignitaries and guests, KMA MC members, students, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening. Thank you, ABK, for giving me this opportunity to introduce the chief guest. It's my privilege to introduce the IT Secretary. Mr. Mohammad Safrullah graduated from PSG College of Technology, Coimbatore in Electrical and Electronics Engineering. He did his master's in management from TA Pai Management Institute, Manipal. He recently, in 2019-20, completed his MS in Public Policy and Management from Carnegie Mellon University with specialization in digital transformation and analytics. He completed this with the highest distinction from Carnegie Mellon University for the MS program in August 2020. Mr. Safrullah started his civil services career in 2010. Before joining civil services, he worked with TCS and IBM. He held various positions during his tenure in the state, of which to mention, he served as the District Assistant Collector Palakkad, Sub-Collector and Sub-Divisional Magistrate Idukki. He was virtually handholding the growth of IT in the state of Kerala by serving as the Director, Kerala State IT Mission and Deputy Secretary, Information Technology Department, Government of Kerala. He is a familiar face in the city of Kochi when he was District Collector and District Magistrate Ernakulam and played a pivotal role in the development of the district. While serving as the Additional Commissioner, State Goods and Services Taxes Department, he got nominated to the MS program in Carnegie Mellon University. Currently, from 2020, he is holding the post of Additional Secretary, Department of Electronics and Information Technology, Government of Kerala, and Project Director, E-Health, Department of Health. During his stupendous career so far, he obtained many rewards and recognitions, and to mention a few, the Best District Collector Award, the State Award in 2018 for implementation of the Women and Child Development and Welfare Projects. He received the award from the Honorable Chief Minister of Kerala in March 2019. He received the award for Ernakulam District for implementation of plastic reduction and environment conservation projects in the district on occasion of World Environment Day 2018. Various recognitions for the following projects implemented in the district from 2016 to 18. Roshni, education project for children of migrant laborers. Numma Unam, towards a hunger-free city. E-Jagrada, safe and effective use of internet for school children. Pudu Yugam, comprehensive educational support for economically backward students in the district. Under 100 ponds project have rejuvenated and created 500 plus ponds in the district in the past 2 years. He also received the Election Commission of India's Award for IT initiatives done in 2016 Assembly elections from the Honorable President of India on 25th January 2017. Received award for online mutation project from the Honorable Chief Minister of Kerala in 2016, and also the Director's Gold Medal and Certificate for the best performance in basic economic principles and 5-year plans in 2011. Welcoming you, sir, to the KMA Digital Summit, and thank you for accepting the invitation. Hope we have sent a bouquet across. Hope you would have received that. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dinesh. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for the beautiful bouquet I received some time back. I would like to thank KMA for having invited me for this occasion. It's a prestigious occasion, and a lot of industry leaders from our state are participating. At this time, I would like to share 3 thoughts. One is about the massive digital transformation and disruption which is happening. All of us in this particular meeting who are participating are personally witnessing it. I would like to divide this digital transformation into 2 parts. One is the way in which private companies and agencies are responding. And the second is how government itself is transforming. When I say government, it's across the globe, not only the state, center, or a specific country I'm talking about. When we look at even developed countries and countries which are developing, we find there's a massive way, push towards the way in which services are delivered today. Citizens across the world are no longer satisfied with the same turnaround time which was existing in the past in the delivery of services. I would say to a large extent they have become impatient, or they would expect a speedy response and a resolution of whatever issues are raised. And so this is a transformation which has been to a large extent coming, as Mr. Madhav was just mentioning in the previous address. It was a change which was on, and the pace at which it has now accumulated and is moving forward is something that all of us are trying to grapple with. So governments also across the globe, at the central level, state level, everyone is trying to transform, and we are trying to adapt and provide these services. The second thing I'd like to talk about is the massive use of analytics and the way in which it is governing or determining the day-to-day life of citizens today. the word dashboard, which is now becoming one of the common word thanks to the COVID dashboards given by various agencies, state, central, and the John Hopkins University, which started giving at an international level. So this is becoming a common usage. And as we know, analytics broadly has three levels of growth. One is the descriptive analytics, which we talk about, that is representing the data in interesting patterns, trying to work out on some trends and to see what we can learn and how effectively we can respond. The second and third is what I feel is going to happen in the future, where we are trying to look at the predictive analytics. And the third stage would be the prescriptive analytics, where actually we would be leveraging the use of artificial intelligence. So I feel the predictive and prescriptive analytics usage is going to drastically increase in the coming days. And therefore, the third issue that I want to highlight is, which is about privacy concerns, which is growing. As we all know, the IT Act, which was passed by Government of India in the year 2000 and subsequently amended in 2008, broadly laid the foundation for introduction of e-governance services, the use of IT instruments, let us say, like, for example, email as admissible evidence in a court of law. So a lot of fundamental changes were brought in when this act was enacted and further amended subsequently. But one more major transformation which happened in a Supreme Court ruling in 2017 was the way in which the Article 21, which is the right to life, is interpreted. Right to life, as we know, guarantees life with dignity, safety, and security for all citizens of our country. And this has expanded in scope over a period of time by the inclusion of various things. For example, the right to have a safe environment, the right to have safe drinking water, and things like that. So in the year 2017, another major transformation which happened was in the way in which the right to privacy was defined and brought into the right to life. So therefore, the right to privacy is also considered as a fundamental right of any citizen of our country. And if you see parallels which are developing in the rest of the world, for example, in Europe, we have GDPR, the General Data Protection Rules, which is very stringent and very tough on any violations. If you look at the recent confrontation between the Commonwealth, the Government of Australia, and Facebook, we find that privacy is going to be a major issue, which obviously is linked to the second point that I said, the growth of predictive and prescriptive analytics. So these are the things I feel are challenges that we are coming about. So what I feel, if we go forward, some of the aspects that we need to look into is, if we look at our own government of India, the data protection draft bill, which is being considered by Honorable Parliament, is about creation of a safe environment where these, the startups, for example, have a good sandbox for testing the compliance to these privacy rules. We have to evolve systems, which addresses the growth trajectory, which facilitates the growth trajectory, at the same time ensures the compliance to these regulations, which are in varied form across the globe. In my view, over a period of time, I feel that there will be a broad integration in which these privacy rules are interpreted across the globe to one commonality, because that may also be to the advantage of the industry which is there. So these are the thoughts that I wanted to share with this August gathering at this moment. And I feel as a country, India, and as a state, Kerala is poised to latch on to this massive digital transformation which is happening. We have a lot of entrepreneurs who are there, who are both risk-taking and at the same time smart enough to capture the mood of the market and ensure that we are climbing this growth trajectory. As we know, friends, today India, we have majority of population who are under 30 years of age. And every month, roughly 1 million young people get added to the job market. So one of the major challenges which our country faces now is creation of these jobs. And these are the jobs which are at the from the top, from the highly skilled jobs till to the low skilled jobs. So these are the things that we as a country are trying to grapple. But at the same time, we have an opportunity in the next 2 decades. If we use this demographic dividend, I feel India as a country would come a long way, not only in terms of the economic parameters, in terms of GDP, but also in the way we have happiness in our lives. So with that, I would like to conclude my talk. I would like to thank KMA for giving me the opportunity to share a few thoughts at this moment. And I'd like to wish all the entrepreneurs, all the industry leaders who are participating here and who are members of KMA, who have been leaders for our state in various areas across the globe, who have been our brand ambassadors. I wish them the best for the massive digital transformation which is happening. Thank you. Good day.
Thank you, sir, for that inaugural lecture. And we at KMA have taken up the challenge of digital and the need to respond in real time, as you said. So we have a specially curated memento for you. Prajit, if you would bring that up, which is a proof of your having been at our summit. This will reach you but this is created right now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. So we now move on to the theme address, and you may remember that our theme for the summit is New Paradigms Progressing Digitally. Before we have Mr. Mitesh Agarwal, CTO Google, talk about this, I would like to invite Ms. Sujata Madhav, who is a life member of KMA and the editor of our KMA News, and who's also worked with Mr. Mitesh Agarwal to introduce the speaker. Over to you, ma'am. You're on.
Thank you, Sarika. President of KMA, Madhav Chandran, chairman of the event, Mr. Balakrishnan, all the distinguished lineup of speakers, KMA officials, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening. It is my privilege and pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Mitesh Agarwal, the CTO of Google Cloud India. Mitesh was appointed as the Director of Customer Engineering for Google Cloud last year. And in this role, he leads a team of engineers and consultants who are focused on helping Indian organizations accelerate their ability to transform through data-powered innovation with Google Cloud Platform, GCP as we so commonly call it, and the Google Workspace. Mitesh has 2 decades of experience across technology consulting, product strategy, enterprise architecture, and enterprise sales. Prior to Google, he was with Oracle Sun Microsystems, where he spent 18 years, till his most recent role as Vice President of Global Key and Lead Accounts. And just prior to that, he was CTO for Oracle India, where I had the opportunity to work closely with him. So here is a little more about Mitesh, and probably you can find through a Google search. Mitesh grew up in Chennai. He passed out from the DAV school in 1994, and school times were not only excelling in academics, but sports, debates, dramatics, and quizzing. So the next 5 years he spent in Rajasthan, his state of origin, BITS Pilani, where he graduated with honors, with a degree in mechanical engineering and a master's in physics. And his area of interest at BITS, he had said, was building robots. In fact, he has the distinction of co-authoring an IEEE paper on a robot named Hydra. So from robotics to sales, the first job was with Wipro. And at that time, he had told us on an earlier occasion, he was the only non-management graduate entrant. Following Wipro, a short stint with Ramco, and then he joined Sun Microsystems, which later merged with Oracle, as an IT architect in the year 2002. The next 18 years, climbed up the ranks, won numerous accolades on the way, and At one time, he was one of the youngest vice presidents in Oracle. Mitesh is also the alumnus of London School of Business. And another aspect which I should share with you is that Mitesh is a voracious reader, both as part of his work life and related to his passion for quizzing. And that is a passion that he has nurtured through school, college, and corporate life. He's such a consummate quizzer. I mean, he's won every quiz worth its buzzer, be it the Tata Crucible, Brand Equity, Landmark Quiz, and so on, so on. Very well known at Kochi to all the business school students across the country and the corporate. He's the quiz master for Rajgiri's annual business quiz for the past at least 5 years that I know of. In fact, on Life in Lockdown, Mitesh commented that what he misses sorely is the weekend get together for quizzing. Mitesh lives in Bangalore. At home, there is wife Seema, there is daughter Dhwani, and there is son Pratham. Ladies and gentlemen, presenting to you Mitesh Agarwal, the astute leader who is a powerhouse of facts, figures, knowledge, and information. So here is a technology leader who is so well known for his business acumen and for his understanding of the digital transformation that is enveloping us. May I invite him to deliver the theme address.
Thank you, Sujata. I hope everybody can hear me clearly, and Sujata has been very kind in the way she's portrayed a lot of what I've done. I can tell you a lot of it is perhaps just exaggeration, but I very humbly will, take any accolades coming my way. Thank you very much for the opportunity. First of all, thank you, KMA. Thank you, Madhav. Thank you, Mr. Balakrishnan, Mr. Thampi, and Sujata, of course. And it's been a privilege here to speak alongside, the IT Secretary of Kerala, Mr. Mohammad Safirullah. I think it's amazing to hear, how connected he is. And I can tell you, after having met a lot of folks, you really have a very, very bright and connected IT Secretary. I hope all of you can see a slide that I'm presenting. Yes, I can see it now. Thank you. And what I'm going to do over the next few minutes is really share some thoughts with all of you. And the topic given here is progressing digitally. And I just thought that maybe I can share some trajectory for the next decade. Considering we are 1 year down and the last 1 year hasn't been, a decade that anybody, a year that anybody wants to, remember. But at the same time, I think we also don't want to forget, the year very quickly. First of all, I think that I should start by congratulating the KMA for, organizing this Phygital Summit. I believe there are 50 plus of you out there in that conference room. And congratulations that we all made it today. I think that, the next 9 years in this decade is going to be led with big technology advances. Particularly, I think in a number of areas that I hope to share today. I think the big advances in enterprise tech really make me optimistic. But that doesn't mean there aren't challenges. I think last year's challenge ended up being an opportunity for tech companies. As you must have heard enough number of times, most tech companies saw this as an opportunity. As they say, never waste a crisis, right? However, I think things like productivity, things like fairness, growth, sustainability, ending poverty, improving education, they all weigh upon us, here back even at Google. And really, this is what I think all of us in our organizations, the government is really trying to, succeed. It's also a measure of, how passionately we here at Google, as well as we technologists, really believe the next 10 years are going to be in technology. And also I wanted to, share over the next few minutes a glimpse of a little bit of what we at Google here believe, is going to be the future of technology and how this is going to aid the proverbial digital transformation that we're going to talk about, and it's going to affect every single person. The first part, that I wanted to really speak about is this very interesting statistic. And as you must have heard, since I'm a quizzer, I decided that I'm going to, collect a few facts that may be interesting for you, right? Essentially, if you really look at it, amongst the youngest countries in the world on an average age in terms of emerging economies. Nigeria has an average age of about 18 years. Mexico is about 27 years. Indonesia is about 29 years. Brazil is about 31 years. And India has an average age of 27 years. Now, this is an important statistic for all of us to remember. The reason I say this is one characteristic of this young population is that they are mobile first and in many cases mobile only. So this is an important thing that all of us should just kind of keep at the back of our mind when we are trying to solve business problems, especially using digital transformation. And obviously the mobile was our only friend over the last 12 months or so. In fact, exactly 12 months back, there was a lockdown, right? And we all know how important, the mobile part became. Now, this was very important because one of the challenges in India is going to be how we will start building for the next billion, and I quote unquote, young users. How will you really be able to do this in entertainment? How will you be able to do this in, banking? How will you do this if you are a retailer? If you're a sports good manufacturer, you're in music, you're in entertainment, does not matter which industry you're in, right? How are you going to be able to build for the next billion users? And this billion users is most likely, as I said, mobile first and mobile only. I think one thing that we are seeing in the mobile first and mobile only, world is that, there are more and more useful devices that are being given to more and more people, right? And what's increasingly happening is that, that the power of functionality, the power of what we want to do is coming closer to your hand. And really it's, this device that everybody wants to use, right? Now, obviously there are various gradations of this device. And one of the things that we did here, and you must have heard of how geos really disrupted, mobility. There are some stats out there. I won't read those stats, but really if you look at it, one of the things that, we've done, for example, Android as an ecosystem, right, is a fantastic way in which we've really brought together affordability of this mobility out there to every user, right? Today, if you really look at it, the internet penetration is 461 million in India, approximately. However, the mobile subscribers happen to be over 1 billion people. There are over 1 billion connections that we have in India. And this is supposed to grow at a 5% CAGR, which means that in the next 5 years, we will be close to 1.5 billion mobile subscribers. That's massive. If you just think about it, over the last 5 to 10 years, this is almost doubled every year. So this is a very, very important area for everybody to remember. Therefore, you see a Jio getting into the whole space, and Google's committed to working with Jio to make sure that we are able to give you a phone which is less than $25, right? So just think about it. A phone which is going to be, a few thousand rupees, less than 4,000, 5,000 rupees. We already have a 4G feature phone, as you know, at $25. We're committed to talking about a phone at less than 4,000 rupees for 5G. And for that, there is a lot of technology innovation. Now, why is this important? Because at the end of the day, the last mile is the most important thing in digital transformation delivery. So this is an aspect that I wanted to, leave behind with all of you. And here are some independent stats by Kantar that did this study, that we expected to have 900 million internet users by 2025, which is a damn good CAGR as well. If you really look at it, that's 8% CAGR over the next 5 years. And what is the more interesting stat in this is that 70% of the new users will come from rural India, which is a massive, massive opportunity for everybody. And on the side of education, if you really look at it, school-going kids, the penetration absolutely, doubled last year thanks to the pandemic, but that was more in the affluent society. But in the next 5 years, the penetration of laptops, PCs, mobile devices, and internet users just for school-going kids is going to be 60%. Think about it. If our average age is going to be 27 years, how is the world going to look in terms of how consumption of digital anything digital is going to be done? If I move forward, what are those drivers, accelerating digital disruption? I think everybody has spoken about COVID. It's well known. The other part also is that organizations are really pressured on fixed and high cost IT budgets. The reality is that, you've got to do more and more with less. Your work from home requirements have meant that, the way you imagined applications is totally different. The way you make payments is totally different. We think that, 5G is going to be a massive technology disruptor in many, many industries. And Mr. Safrala spoke about this, the evolving digital sovereignty requirements, the data privacy laws, the data privacy bills, all of these are going to be very, very important as an overall encompassing view of how digital disruption will really happen. However, when we talk about digital disruption, I think enough and more has been spoken about this area. However, one of the things that a lot of folks ask us many, many times is, what's next? How is this going to be differentiated? If every bank, every telecom, every retailer is going to digitally disrupt, what's going to be the differentiator? So I thought that I'll use today's talk to really talk about this trajectory, in terms of what is going to be that next level. And a few of these things are out there in the future, but I thought these are opportunities for India that we should start thinking about. And I'll talk about some stats in terms of the opportunity that we think that is there. The first one is something from a Google hardware event that we did last October. We talked about the future of what we call ambient computing, where essentially a single consistent consumer experience is given at home, at work, or when you're on the move. Basically, wherever you need computing. Now, essentially, if you really look at this, this is the next level of digital disruption. What it means is it's a consumer vision of devices, services working together almost continuously. You can dictate a shopping list to your smart speaker on Google Assistant or on Alexa, later get that on your phone. You can have services like search and email, that can be used on one device and accessed seamlessly on another. And in the longer term, perhaps even cars, apartments might be configured on the fly, meeting the needs and choices of a specific individual. Now, all of this is with individuals controlling their own data, aware of the privacy rules that are there, but giving access to their computing only with the individual's permission. However, remember that ambient computing is not just for consumers, and it's not limited to few devices and services. The same concepts of higher connectivity, greater awareness, more intelligence will come to the enterprise as well. So if you're a small and medium business, you're a startup, you're in any of the businesses as an enterprise, this is going to be a $4 trillion industry with a scale and capability that will just dwarf any digital disruption that we're talking about. And I wanted to, kind of introduce the concept of ambient computing out here in KMA. I think this is the first time we're speaking about it, as Google. So I wanted to use this opportunity to, kind of introduce this at the Kerala Management Association Digital Summit. Now, here's another part, right? How will this happen is a question. Now, how this will happen is with all the words and buzzwords that we all hear about. Larger and larger data sets, AI, 5G, virtual infrastructure in the cloud, edge infrastructure, mobile and cloud-based apps, blockchain, IoT, pervasive security layers offered by any of the providers. What will happen is when you combine all of this, you'll get something totally new, probably including many technology surprises that haven't even been invented yet. And our belief is that when ambient enterprise computing starts, right, you will have a whole new area that will start talking about in terms of powerful computing wherever it's needed. You'll spot new efficiencies. You'll have new products and services. You'll have better use of materials. You'll have a lot more brain power, human experience, and a lot more that you can do with computing that is there today. Now, obviously, cloud computing is likely to be at the architectural and management core of this new enterprise ambient technology. So not only is the move to cloud happening faster and bigger than anything in the history of enterprise tech, what we are also seeing is that this has become the greatest repository of the necessary network, storage, compute, and management of the large-scale aware systems that we'll all be creating. In my mind, it'll be like one of the key points for planning, analyzing, and responding to anything that we have as disruption in the future. And what this means is that every one of you out there in the audience, whichever business you're in, right, you have an opportunity. It doesn't matter that you have to be an IT organization. If you are, for example, a telecom provider, you have a huge role to play, as you can see there, right? If you are in the bank or if you are in a financial services world, you have a huge role to play out there because you can play in a blockchain network out there. So really, if you ask me, that's the first concept that I wanted to introduce, which is around ambient computing. The second part is really what I call the 10-year challenge. And in my mind, there are three aspects to this 10-year challenge. So if you really look at the big story of the past decade, right, like if you saw the 2010 to 2020 era, there were three things that were important. One was connection, the other was contact, and the third was cloud. What do I mean by connection? So in 2010, there were about 12.5 billion things connected to the internet, roughly. Besides sensors, phones, laptops, tablets, machines, and so on and so forth. Today, there are probably about 31 to 40 billion sensors alone. So just to repeat that, right? We've got almost 3x to 3.5x of just sensors alone connected to the internet in 10 years. And this is what we call the Internet of Things. You've got electric meters, automobiles, connected appliances, and they've just begun to take off, as all of us know. Imagine the future in 5 years to 10 years down the line. The other part was contact, right? There were fewer than 300 million smartphones sold in 2010. And that was only because, Android, right, grew 9-fold that year. What that meant is about 250 million smartphones were just because of Android. Last year, there were 1.15 or 1.2 billion smartphones sold, and about 3.5 billion smartphones were used worldwide. And imagine 1/3 of them are in India. So you can imagine the power that's going to be there of contact, especially in the world of digital transformation. The third C is going to be cloud. In 2010, again, cloud computing was mostly in the form of software as a service. So Gmail was a great example of that. YouTube, where you consume technology, when you consume music and entertainment, was a great example of software as a service. Salesforce.com is a great example of software as a service, where you could get CRM services available for you, where you simply looked at it as utility and paid for what you use. Today, just software as a service is a $260 billion global business. And I'm talking about this growth in 10 years. And this is really growing at 20 to 30% CAGR every year. Beyond infrastructure, customers want industry-specific tools. They want AI that really gives businesses new insights and advantages. So really think about this. The 10-year challenge is connection, contact, and cloud. However, those aren't the only things that barely existed in 2010, right? If you really look at mobile application revenue, which took off with smartphones, it crossed $100 billion in 2018. It's projected to grow to $400 billion in the next 4 to 5 years. Mobile gaming is now a $63 billion industry. Just to repeat that, $63 billion industry out of a $135 billion global market. So just very, very interesting stats out there, right? Smart cloud-connected speakers introduced just in 2015, sold globally at about 100 million units just a year back. And in 2020 alone, there were another 50 million units of smart cloud-connected speakers that were sold. AI was mostly used in demonstration projects 10 years ago. Now it's in almost everything that almost every tech organization does. Globally, just to give you a stat, AI was just a $4 billion market in 2016. Today, it's projected to be worth $170 billion in the next 4 years. So you can understand, how the whole evolution of connection, contact, and cloud has moved. And I thought, what therefore will be the next decade, right? What will be the next decade for India when it comes to this? This was 2010 to 2020. How's 2021 to 2030 going to look like? Here's just something that we put together, right? If I really look at legacy in what was called legacy in 2010, what's it going to be in 2020 and what's it going to be in 2030 and beyond? Our view is that, phones, devices have moved to smartphones. They remain with phones and apps, and we're going to move to what is called the smart edge, right? we're going to have really a proliferation of the smart edge, right? You will start having, for example, physical locks become pervasive security. As I spoke about ambient computing, it's highly likely that we will move into ambient security too. Package software was SaaS. It became open source and continuous. It will now become no code. What no code means is that you as a user, as a business user, does not need to know anything about programming. You will be given a set of tools, exactly like how you have email. I don't think any of us taught our children how to use WhatsApp or Facebook, as an example, right? We never told them how to use Spotify. We never told them how to use Uber, right? So you will find a lot of this. And in India, we're doing some very interesting work. For example, Ather Energy, you must be seeing ads from them all over the place. They're one of India's, truly electric vehicle organization who use IoT at their core. And they constantly keep collecting data. This is very much in India. And by the way, they sell thousands of electric two-wheeler vehicles. In Bangalore, one of the most popular forms of transport recently, right? Now, what you will see is there are two enduring forces behind this change that is happening. One is the way we've been able to model so many things with software. The other is automation. From more and more powerful chips, better storage, richer software, more data, and bigger workforce with more players, you'll find that automation and powerful software, when they get together, magic starts happening. And with people working on lots of high value tasks, assisted in more places by networked intelligence, machine learning, you will find that, this is a totally different world that you will see in the next 10 years. My view is that even in 2021, right, a lot of things are early things that we are seeing about 2030. There'll be a lot more devices gathering a lot more data. We're already seeing that, as I explained, right? What this means is there'll be a lot more productivity, both at an individual and a societal level. So you'll have working with smarter machines, people get more time to do their best, more creative work. AI will be kind of more an efficiency assistant, right? And it can indicate a new areas of improvement and invention. Imagine possibilities of education that you can deliver with the way AI is evolving. What this means is you'll have more and more innovation. If you have more innovation, you as a business will have better time to market. You'll have better supply chain efficiency. You'll have newer and more flexible ways of working and making products. You'll have better awareness of customers that you're selling to. You'll collectively and individually for more personalization and better experiences that you'll be able to provide to your end customers. What all of this will mean is it'll demand better security at every point of the engagement. Fortunately, while there's a lot to do, we already see new ways that you can build more products and systems. One of those ways that we are talking about is AI in the edge will really strengthen AI in the cloud. Our belief is that, the next 10 years of digital transformation are going to be about AI on the edge that will really start, giving more data, the whole mobile phone revolution, and the way connectivity is improving with security. The final point that I wanted to make about is around quantum supremacy. Now, Google really spoke about this notable development at Google, Cloud and Google I/O last year, right, where we announced that we'd achieved quantum supremacy, or a quantum computing exercise that bested existing computing. So it'll be many, many years before quantum is a product, but the proof points are getting really, really exciting. It's really becoming conceivable that by the end of the decade, quantum will be an aspect in figuring out particularly hard scientific and enterprise problems with a lot more insights that we're able to get today. Just start imagining 5 to 7 years down the line, what the next buzzword will be. Will it be digital transformation or quantum transformation? Here's another thing that's going to really happen, and it's happening today. Enterprise software will be near continuous learning and response. And that's primarily going to be because of the advancements in AI, the advancements in data, in APIs, in containers. So all of these, when you get together, is when you will have enterprise software that cannot be upgraded once every year or 2 years or 3 years. It simply is not possible for organizations to keep up. So you will have enterprise software that will continuously be learning and continuously be responding. And our belief is that the future of ambient computing relies on enterprise software. So for all those tech companies out there developing software, right, you will find that, really talking about the next set of how this near continuous learning and response will happen is a very, very critical part. The other part is going to be opportunities out there, right, in each of the industries. And this is going to be finally where I'll end. At one level, digital transformation is about bringing computational capabilities to every area of the enterprise. You encode data in ways that you can really use, multiple use cases. You can enable people to be far more effective in their jobs, right? And work from home is a great example of that. This very conference is a great example of that. You have a bunch of folks who are physically able to be there, but I'm here in Bangalore, able to talk to all of you, right? And able to talk to you in real time. I'm able to find new efficiencies. I'm able to, I don't need to spend the entire day traveling, right? And it's so much more efficient, and therefore it gives me a lot more time to innovate in my day job. Over the long period, however, these capabilities will improve each other's performance too. That's part of the magic of digital transformation. What I mean here is, think about this slide. I've just given some representative, industries out there, whether it's retail or healthcare or financial services, media entertainment, industrial and manufacturing, any of these areas. Think about what happened last year when we couldn't go down to our, local Kirana store or go to a retailer. They were all shut down, right? That's where e-commerce really started playing a role. But think about the supply chain problems that started happening. Think about the search capabilities of retail. Think about the recommendations. If you were searching for a particular product, right, what other recommendations could I give you? How do I make sure all of this is connected with the demand, supply, and optimization of the goods in my warehouse? Now, interestingly, the underlying part, the bottom set, there was everything to do with AI. There was no way, if people could not go to a call center, how do I still operate a contact center? How could I have complaint management system when we were locked down? So that's why contact center AI started becoming front and center of everything, right? What if I had to do eKYC? What if I had to do a video KYC? If you could open an account at the bank, huge opportunities there. Again, document understanding AI is a very, very big leap there, right? Not OCR-based character recognition, but really using AI. As in, if I could scan my PAN card and it could pre-populate my fields on the PAN card or my passport or Aadhaar card, how do I do it for millions and millions and billions of users? This is happening across the board. The opportunity is massive, whether it's for the next billion users who are going to be hugely connected, mobile first, mobile only, AI driven, and eventually looking forward to ambient computing. I'm going to take a pause there. Stop. I know I've been non-stop speaking, but maybe it's time to take some questions if there are any questions.
If there's anybody in the audience here in the room who would like to ask a question, please raise your hand and we'll have the mic passed. There's a gentleman at the back. Can you please pass the mic?
Hello, sir. It was a great insight to what is actually happening, what ambient computing and everything is to be able to provide for us with the enablement of AI. But sir, as we have already Indian laws cover the privacy concerns and all those things, what about the moral, ethical, and legal implementation of something like an automated car, self-driven car, causing an injury or something for a person, or some sort of an autonomous boat in a factory, like an automobile factory, causing an injury to a person? The legal implication will go to the developer or the licensee, or why are we not thinking in these lines on the moral and ethical sides of AI and cloud computing and all?
Thank you. Thank you for that. Right. It's great to see someone actually in a suit after a long time when we've all been in track pants and shirts and t-shirts. But that's on a lighter note. Thank you for the question. I think you've raised a fantastic point. if you ask me here at Google, one of the important things that Sundar Pichai deeply believes in, and as you know, Google is at the front and center of artificial intelligence. We are a data first. We were born to just crunch data, as you know, right? Search and ads is purely about crunching data. But the ethical aspect of it, how do you do AI responsibly, is a very, very important aspect. And which is why, as I said, and I really liked what Mr. Safrala said, right? The laws around this are going to be extremely complicated for anyone to, come up with. However, everything that we do, and I can speak only about Google, and I'm pretty sure it's true of all companies who are talking about AI, right? The implications of who's responsible. For example, if you're an insurer, who's responsible for the insurance? There is no driver, right? So who are you going to, really do that? So there are very, very interesting research going on around this. I'd love to actually have you, happy to speak to you offline. This is a very, very deep subject. But to your point, I think there is a very large area of research around ethics for AI, around responsible AI. So one of the tenets of Google, so what we've done, if you can go and just look at our AI principles, it's like the laws of robotics that Isaac Asimov came up with. He came up with 3 laws of robotics. Similarly, we've come up with what we call, the laws of AI, which we will never ever cross. At least at Google, every AI research project that we do, everything that we embed into our tools. To give you a very recent example, you must have seen that, we, for example, no more will collect cookies when you're browsing. That was part of our responsible AI and ethics in AI initiative. And increasingly, as laws become more and more stringent, you will find that, it will be imperative on tech companies to do this. They will have no choice. We'll have absolutely no choice. So it's better that we do it upfront. And there's a lot of work going on here, right? And lots of very good material available. I'm happy to send you the link. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, very happy to, send you a lot of material around this. I've spoken of, if you do a bit of a YouTube search, I've spoken on this topic for about 30 minutes. Happy to share that too.
Thank you, sir. I'll definitely connect with you.
I don't know if we have time, so please stop me. If we don't have time, right? Happy to connect offline, but happy to also take
in the interest of time, we will need to probably take a pause and move on. So, sir, with all due respect, I think if you would like to continue your speech, we could do that and conclude. And questions, I will take a pause because of paucity of time.
No, thank you. I really appreciate, all the time. And I want to thank the KMA again for the opportunity. Very happy to partner on any innovation initiatives. We at Google here are extremely, happy to partner with any organizations, small and medium businesses, startups, the government, the KMA, its patrons. Very happy to, work with you. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'm available on LinkedIn. Or my email ID should be obvious with my name there, right? Feel free to, put it down there. And thank you for the opportunity again. Thank you, Sujata. Have a very good evening.
Thank you, sir. We all love being able to do more with what we have at hand, and maybe all wake up into a world of ambient enterprise computing where all tedious tasks are automated and insights and data used to build in convenience as you predicted for us. So we would also like to gift you our specially curated memento. Prajit, if you may bring up the memento. We do this, we have a memento which is taken right now as a proof of your having been here with us for this summit. This will reach you, and this was taken during the summit right now. Thank you for being here today. With both our speakers speaking on security and privacy, it is now time to move on to our keynote address. And before we move on to Mr. Ajit from TCS, who's a CSO at TCS, having personally been associated with TCS for more than a decade, I can relate that everything we do in TCS had security at its core. So it is a pleasure for me to welcome Mr. Ajit for our keynote address. And before we move to Ajit, I would like to welcome Mr. Algey Escada to introduce the speaker for us.
President Madhav Chandran, Chairman A. Balakrishnan, past presidents of KMA, invited delegates, managing committee members, and KMA members. It is my privilege and honor to introduce the next speaker, who is a doyen of information security. Mr. Ajit Menon has been with TCS for over 2 decades. As Chief Security Officer, he is responsible for strategy, design, deployment, and governance of controls to safeguard TCS business interests. He is also responsible for ensuring continuity of TCS business operations and customer service delivery. Ajit has been working in the area of information security for the last 15 plus years and was responsible for adoption of ISO 27001 and making security a way of life within the organization. He was also responsible for setting up of the TCS first 2 overseas delivery centers. Ajit has been instrumental in standardizing the security controls across various geographies under his leadership. TCS has become one of the first companies to be assessed under ISO 27001 2013 versions standard. He was also a key member of the leadership team that incorporated the privacy framework at TCS. Presenting and welcoming Mr. Ajit Menon, Chief Security Officer, Tata Consultancy Services.
Thank you, Mr. Khalid. Thank you for that introduction, and I'm very happy to be here. I plan to talk about a topic which maybe a year ago would have been much more interesting. We actually today are celebrating the anniversary of the Janta curfew, which we had on the 22nd of March last year. It was a Sunday, if I believe so. And it was a point when many organizations had started the work from home as a process. Many were still grappling with what to do. And as we get into this session, and when we were speaking with the organizers, we were also thinking which topic would be great. And is this a session a year too late for us? So what I'm going to cover is not about the technology challenges alone. I will potentially talk about the risks that we have with this concept and risks that we potentially have to overcome before we make this a successful model. Okay. So without further ado, let me just share my screen, just run through a short presentation, and then we will quickly get to some questions at the end. Just give me a second. Right, and you. Okay, are you able to see my screen right now? Let me move on from here.
We can see.
In case there's a challenge, do let me know. But in the interest of time, I'll just move on. And let us talk about what are the benefits, what are the enablers, what are the challenges as we spoke, and how do we adapt to the new normal. We'll come to that towards the end. When we talk about the benefits of working from home, I think over the year, many of you who are in this room or having leadership positions have actually benefited in multiple ways. I'm just putting some of the significant ones as we see it. Firstly is our ability to persist with continuance of work, right? The resilience that we've been able to bring into the workplace by taking the workplace to everybody's home. Okay. That's primarily as we saw it as was the need of the hour last year. But as we went ahead, we also realized there are other subtle benefits in terms of one, you don't need that much of workspace. You could actually do away with a lot of real estate that you have at your disposal. You could do a lot more with technology than what you used to do before. Your teams can actually have a better work-life balance. In most of the cities, travel is what takes the maximum amount of time. And hence, if you can actually bring in a work-life balance, that helps. And we've also heard a lot of people being able to have enhanced productivity, primarily because of their ability to switch between different things that they can do and not get into a monotonous work stream where the productivity typically tends to dull away towards the end of the day. So this way, we've actually seen some benefits. So let's quickly get to some enablers also. In the interest of time, I'll breeze through the initial slides. So the first few are no-brainers. You need to have your hardware, you need to have connectivity. But again, just the raw hardware and connectivity doesn't help. You really need to have collaboration tools. You need to have ability to do a good amount of tracking. Are people actually spending time on things that you want them to spend time on? And you also need to have a great project management capability to be able to actually visualize, are your projects on track? Are you going to deliver to what is required? Is your customer happy with what you're delivering from home? Is the quality any different this year as it was compared to last year, and so on? So these are aspects which go beyond just looking at the hardware and the technology piece per se. If we look at the challenges here, there are, I can just bucket it into three pieces. If you take the people-specific challenges, and this also will come as risks, and I'll speak about it a little later. One is obviously the lack of social interaction. Today, if you talk about the coffee table discussion that used to have in the pantries, much of that has actually disappeared. We are all very crisp on our calls. We get on to discussions with our people. We disconnect the calls at the end of the hour, and there are no follow-ups. So there is no socialization, there is no team building. None of this happens today. We are all very specific and very focused on what we want to achieve. Now, this in the long run actually tends to get people to be very boxed. They do not know where the organization is going, where the leaders want to take them, and so on. Okay. If we talk about the process-related challenges, now you have people who are being onboarded in different locations. You haven't met them. You actually have people who do not get connected every time, and those people are lost in the organization. They don't know where the organization is moving. So this was very easy for people who were a part of the company. But when you take new people, and when you look at what is their understanding of the organization, what is their understanding of where this company is moving, I think in many cases, a lot of the youngsters, a lot of people who joined the companies new felt that they were lost. And the other challenges which we all understand is the technology specific challenges, the last mile. Like companies had great infrastructure, they had great redundancy built in, but we can't say the same about home. We don't have DG sets at home. In case you have a problem, let's say like we have a cyclone impact and you have a power outage in a particular city, how soon can a house get back to normalcy? You can't. So we have many of these technology specific challenges also. So these are aspects which we all need to think of, and we'll get into very specific items of what exactly are things which you should be looking at in case you really want to take the work from home as a long-term model. Okay. Now, let's talk about the holistic risk. The technology risks were the primary ones which we all started thinking about. So exactly a year ago, when we talked about moving work home, the technology and the data security piece was the first and foremost activity that we all started thinking on. How do we secure your work that you're actually doing from home? How do you make sure that the processes that you deploy are in accordance with how it was while it was back in office? Okay. Can you go back to your customers in case you're in a service industry and give them the same assurance? Or otherwise, if you can go back to your stakeholders and tell them that this is exactly how it is supposed to run. Take a case of your board meetings. How do you go back to your board and convince them that your security posture today is exactly what it was when you were in office? So you have the cybersecurity threats, you have a lot of issues which potentially can come up. So when we talk about cybersecurity, there are a number of aspects, and I'm not getting into detail. If there are questions around it, we could speak about it after the session. At the same time, when we talk about data security, there are organizations which invested a lot in security before. But for companies who did not do it, or for whom focus was not on security until the pandemic struck, they really had a hard time stabilizing on this work from home model. And that is where the data security components and the data privacy regulations, etc., they all got compounded. And the IT teams there, the security teams there, the compliance teams in those organizations really had a hard struggle in trying to get beyond and make this a working model. Those are the challenges that they were faced with. We were also lucky that the government of India at the same time did relax a lot of policies. Otherwise, many of these steps that organizations wanted to take would have been far more complicated than what it was today. Now, when we take a little different view, let's talk about factors which are beyond technology, beyond security, which potentially could have concerns on security. For example, your workspaces. When people were working in office, you actually had proper work areas for them. Now, when people are sitting at home, you really don't know whom your employee is actually sitting with. Maybe their brother works or sister works for a competition. They may be overhearing calls that happen. Okay. There are so many of these elements which could actually be risks to your organization. Now, unlike the West, where typically people tend to work from home occasionally, maybe they used to do it in the past, like a couple of days a week. It was never a basic culture in this country. We in this country also do not have the luxury of having independent rooms for each of us. And that's not how the society was before. But it's time to think whether that's the way we should go forward. Now, how many of our people can actually come back and say that, yes, I have a dedicated office space at home? So these are aspects which, again, have to be thought of, which in terms of the ergonomics, et cetera, which maybe from an HR standpoint. But if you actually look at it, more than ergonomics, I, as a security guy, would be more worried about who's this person sitting with? Is the other person at home, he or she working for competition? Is there a risk of information actually moving out? Or is there even to take a very simple example, typically many of the business process organizations, when they actually do work, there is a lot of focus that is required in the work that you do. You're under extreme stress because of the kind of volumes that you process, and it requires a lot of concentration. Now, in office, we don't allow mobile phones. In office, we don't allow any other activity to happen. It's pin-drop silence, and people are actually at work. There is a good amount of concentration and focus. Take the same scenario and visualize this at home. You have a guy trying to focus, and because of the size of the house, you actually either have a cooker hooting away in the background, or you have somebody else watching TV or playing music, and you're distracted. Now, with this, what kind of quality of output can you expect from people? And hence, there is a huge expectation of creating proper workspaces at home also. So it's not just about the ergonomics, about the HR factor and all. You also have to look at each of these non-technical aspects also as what risks can it bring to our organization and our processes or our deliverables to our customers and so on. So that's the point that I wanted to raise, that do not focus only on technology, do not focus only on direct security attributes. Please do also focus on attributes which may not look directly security related, but may have a bearing on each of these things. So as I said before, when you talk about other aspects of beyond the technology piece per se, one is isolation. The people who are working there do not get an opportunity to engage with others. They do not get an opportunity to engage with their seniors. They do not get an opportunity to actually learn from their seniors in terms of how do they handle a very complicated task. When you are on the floor, there is a lot of subtle learning. When you're in office, you actually see your seniors taking complex decisions with ease. It's your opportunity to learn from them as to what actually went into the decision making. They may not involve you, but being around, sensing what is happening really makes a big difference. Now, this is exactly what you miss when you actually work from home. So it's important for the leaders to make sure that they don't forget these aspects for their team. So you should involve some of your colleagues, even if they're not directly related to the work that you're doing, so that over time you groom them and you build them into it. And as I would have said here, learning is not a priority in terms of people just want to stick to technical learnings, but now that's not life. There is so much to do beyond technology. As the example I gave you, taking complex decisions. This does not come by doing WBTs. This does not come by attending 20 training programs. This actually comes with experience. This comes by seeing your seniors take such decisions, looking at what exactly went through their mind, what all aspects did they ponder on, and how did they actually come with this decision? Was there a better decision? So try to involve yourself. Trust deficit is another big challenge that's going to come. See, today, most of us are very happy working with people because you were working with them before. Now, take the case of a project leader in an area where your teams are very volatile. Now, if you haven't met anybody from your team, the confidence that you typically have on your team to pull off a complex project or pull off a timeline which is stringent, I don't think the project leader today is equipped to do that. He would be looking at those reliable people who can actually help him in this time of need. But what do you do when 95% or 100% of your team are people whom you have never met? How do you actually overcome those challenges? So these are aspects, again, which is very important and is very critical that organizations realize that there are many things beyond attending calls, attending sessions, and being sure that you've done your work. Because what you're doing as work today is only meeting your today's deliverable. And as an organization, if we do not take care of these aspects in terms of the trust deficit with managers, people not learning, none of us are going to grow. And it's very, very important for the organization to actually put in programs to focus on these aspects, because technology or other core areas, I'm sure people will be interested by themselves and will do those sessions. They can do it individually. There are a lot of sessions available. But what about the other buildings? So this is another area that we really need to be taking the entire organization has to take a very different view of how exactly they should be building a long-term work from home proposition. First and foremost, we have to be clear that this is not something which one party can solve by themselves. It is both the employee and the organization who have to get together and understand how exactly you want to move forward with it, what works, what does not work, and how do you want to overcome some of these problems which I've stated here. Okay. There could be concerns about privacy. If you make it too intrusive, people will not be comfortable. So there are solutions which actually do screen recording. There are solutions that actually do, they enable the webcam on a periodic basis. But then when people are working from home, there are so many scenarios that you may have other members in the family who may be captured, and it becomes a huge privacy challenge. Now, we do understand why organizations do it, but at the same time, our family comes first, and you wouldn't want their privacy to be at risk just because the company wants to implement a policy. So it's very important that the organization and the employee both get together and create a good working model which can help take this on the long term. In the passing, I would say that yes, work from home is here to stay. It's an excellent way to make sure that you de-stress from many of the things that create stress in our life, right? But at the same time, I've spoken about a huge amount of challenges. I've not spoken about solutions here, because solutions are something that, again, between the organization and the employee, as I'm saying on this slide, you really need to work together to make sure that you can build a robust model which is for you. There is no one shoe fit all. I mean, I can't give you a solution which I have possibly developed here and somebody try and replicate it. It's not going to work. And hence, best that there is actually a joint team. You will have the HR teams come in, the security teams come in, the compliance team comes in, the management gives their directions on what exactly they want to achieve. All of you all together can create a great package and make sure this work from home is here to stay. With this, I'll end my talk here. I'll possibly take questions if there are any, and we could discuss this further.
We can have perhaps one question because we are almost at the top of the hour. So we'll take one question if anybody would like to ask a question either online or in the room. Okay. Is there a question online? Can you check, please? Okay.
Yes, not. I said maybe this is a session year too late. So.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. I myself found, I found myself nodding along to every one of the challenges that you described. And I'm sure every person in this room would have also, because they've been working for a year from home, they would be nodding along. And it was a very, very well articulated session. Thank you for having taken us along on the journey and acknowledging the actual risks that we would encounter in a work from home situation. If you're all feeling very riled up and want to discuss about the summit, and I see a lot of people clicking pictures, and if you're planning to talk about it digitally, I would request you to please use our hashtag KMA Digital Summit 2021. And now we go on to a very interesting part of the whole session. We have the actual panel. We have the panel discussion coming up, and we have the panel here physically in this room. So in order to, and we have a eminent set of educationists and, sorry, I'm very sorry. We cannot move on without having presented the specially curated memento for Mr. Ajit Menon. Thank you, sir, for being here, and we would like to present to you the memento that Prajit would be now presenting. This is proof that you have been here with us, and this will be reaching you real time, but sorry, this will be reaching you shortly, and thank you for being here. We will now move on to the panel discussion. I'm so sorry. I think I've got this is not something that we've had in a long time, and probably I'm feeling very nervous that we are standing in a real room and having a session. So let me go on. We now have the panel discussion. I would like to, we would have the panel moderated by Dr. Saji Gopinath. And as part of the panel, we have Tapan Raiguru, we have Dr. Kunjaria P Isak, we have Anuradha Shenoy, but I'm not the right person to be introducing them. So I would be requesting Mr. S.R. Nair, our past president, to step up to the podium and introduce the panel.
President Madhav, distinguished invitees, panelists, ladies and gentlemen, both online and offline. Progressing digitally, new paradigms is a theme for the KMA Digital Summit this year, brought to you in a hybrid form, both digital and physical. I remember reading a book from the thought leader John Naisbitt back in 1994, which predicted people wanting to move into a participative democracy and governance than the current presently existing representative democracy and governance. And today we have a host of devices along with the internet and the Internet of Things to facilitate that. And some of the speakers in the last three instances, they have spoken about that. My job is to introduce the panelists and welcome them to the stage. The theme of discussion is new paradigms progressing digitally, a vast topic as digital wave is all pervasive, impacting almost all segments of the society. We may have to identify a few of the key areas where this is affecting in an exponential manner. Some of these could be innovative solutions by startups or social engineering or disruptions to education or skilling, etc. The panel could look at how such hits are happening globally and the opportunities and challenges thereof. as well as the feasibility of adoption of the same in our Kerala context. The panel will also discuss on how this will affect the business, education, industry, trade and commerce at the organization and the individual level. Let me introduce you to the speakers. I'll start with our moderator, Professor Dr. Saji Gopinath. Professor Dr. Saji Gopinath is the founder vice chancellor of the newly formed Kerala University of Digital Sciences, Innovation and Technology, shortly called as Kerala Digital University. Before assuming this role, in November 2020, Dr. Gopinath was heading the Kerala Startup Mission, developing the startup ecosystem in the state, and was also serving as the director of Indian Institute of Information Technology and Management Kerala, IIITMK. Under his leadership, Kerala has been awarded top performer startup ecosystem of among the states startup ranking conducted by Government of India in 2018 and 2019. Before joining Government of Kerala in April 2017, Dr. Gopinath served IIM, Kozhikode IIMK for 17 years as Professor in Operations Management, Dean Development and Academics, and ever since its inception in 1997, and played a stellar role in making IIMK one of the top 5 institutions in the country. He also served as the founder dean of School of Management at Bennett University, Delhi, between 2009 and 2011. He was also the director of TAPMI Management Institute, Manipal. A gold medalist in mechanical engineering from Kerala University CET College of Engineering, with masters and PhD in operations management from Indian Institute of Science. He has a career spanning of 30 years working in leading industry and academia. He is a recipient of several national and international awards for his scholastic and professional achievements. I would welcome our President Madhav to welcome with a bouquet and invite Professor Dr. Saji Gopinath onto the stage. Yes. Applause is allowed. Please be seated, sir. Thank you. Dr. Kunjaria P Isak, one of the distinguished panelists. Professor Dr. Kunjaria P Isak was the founder vice chancellor of APJ Abdul Kalam Technology University. It was initially called as Kerala Technological University, and the member secretary of AICTE, All India Council for Technical Education, All India Council for Technical Education, Government of India, and before that, the director of Technical Education, Government of Kerala. He holds a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from CET, University of Kerala, and is a gold medalist in master's degree in civil engineering with specialization in transportation engineering from IIT Madras. Dr. Isak took his doctorate from Bangalore University. As the vice chancellor of APJ Abdul Kalam Technological University, he established the university in an e-governance platform and developed the academic curriculum with emphasis on outcome-based education and project-based learning. He is a leading consultant and researcher in this area of transportation engineering. He has shown keen interest in collaborating and partnering with the industries. He was involved in the process of the manufacturing of M-sand, an alternative to river sand. He has served as a member of different boards of several national institutions such as IIT, IIM, SPA, NITTR, CBSE, NITI, etc., etc. I would welcome ABK to welcome Professor Dr. Kunjaria P Isak to the stage with a bouquet. Mr. Tapan Rayaguru, Chief Executive Officer, Kerala Startup Mission. Mr. Tapan Rayaguru is presently the CEO of Kerala Startup Mission, where he has joined only very recently, a post that fell vacant by the demitting of the office by Professor Dr. Saji Gopinath. An alumnus of IIM, Calcutta, and IIT Kharagpur, Raiguru has more than 25 years of global experience in the technological and analytical services industry, where he scaled data sciences capabilities with focus on machine learning and AI. He had held several senior executive positions in Ramco Systems, Mu Sigma, Global Logic Incorporated, Infosys, and held the post of the Global Chief Operating Officer at Tredence Incorporated. Tapan was also a senior vice president, business analytics and research with Fidelity Investments, where his team helped business leaders make better decisions with insights from data. Here is best wishes to Tapan Raiguru as the CEO of Kerala Startup Mission. The bar is up there, and we would expect you to take the bar much higher there. Welcome to the stadium. President Madhav will welcome you with a bouquet. Please. No taxes for applauding. Be seated, sir. Ideally, the lady should have been called first. My apologies. Anuradha Shenoy. She's a panelist. Anuradha Shenoy is the Deputy General Manager Digital at Kochi Refinery BPCL. Anuradha Shenoy comes with 25 years of experience in spearheading various digital initiatives at BPCL's refineries at Mumbai as well as here at Cochin, and in the area of IoT, robotic process automation, and machine learning, etc. She has great experience in operational aspects of information technology, covering implementation of refinery core systems, mainly manufacturing executive system that's called MES, various enterprise integration solutions, refinery development software, enterprise IT solution with LIMS, with instrument integration and corporate dashboards. She has made very many presentations in various technology forums and topics of MES, LIMS, business performance management, and digital technologies. It is said that data is today's oil. Anuradha Shenoy has a unique distinction of combining both data and oil. Before handing over to Professor Gopinath, I would welcome Anuradha Shenoy to the podium and request by ABK to welcome her with a bouquet. Please, ma'am. Professor, all yours. Thank you.
Thank you, President Madhav and other distinguished attendees and participants. For me, it is actually almost more than a year since I attended a physical function, and I'm sure that this is true with many of us here. And it's a great feeling that we are again back to the physical world in the summit. We have, I think, an hour, roughly around 45 minutes to an hour, and we hope that we could elicit maximum insights from this eminent panelists on this topic, a very important topic of progressing digitally, the paradigm shifts. And we heard last almost an hour, 3 important talks, which looks at various dimensions. So I'll build on that. Let me start with Mr. Tapan, because if you look at, I think from the talk, we spoke about 2-3 things. We spoke about data, we spoke about artificial intelligence or AI, we speak about innovation and the startups. And I think if I draw a Venn diagram, you will come in the center of all these things, right? So I think that's why I thought I will start with you. Looking at what are the key paradigm shifts which is happening in these fields, which actually is going to make changes in the society as a whole. Then we will come back specifically to in the future rounds. But your large perspective, and as a person who was working in the data space for long and over the last 20 years, this has changed substantially. So what are some of the key changes or paradigm shifts which you see in this area?
Yeah, so the applications are based on what business you are in, but let's go through some of the fundamentals of what has really changed, right? So one is storage has become cheap. When I started tech, 20 MB drive, you needed 2 people to carry it. Now this phone itself has, I don't know, 256 GB without an eye blink. The other is processing power has obviously increased. This phone is again more powerful than the ship that landed human beings on the moon. Now, the part that was missing or that is still developing is the algorithm part, which is in the beginning we did plus minus division Excel spreadsheet. Then we did a little bit of statistics. So I have been in this side for about 15 years now in the world of data. The algorithms are the ones that are rapidly changing. So you have data that if any data you want, you can store it very cheaply. You can process them really fast. The Google person talked about computing on the edge, but algorithms are the fundamental paradigm shifters here. So machine learning has become extremely common. My son who's 15 years old can actually code some ML, and it's going to get easier and easier. And we also refer to the no code world, right? So when it comes to your business and application of it, my sense is 3-5 years from today, you really don't need to know any algorithm. There will be wrappers that other companies will produce. Your role will be more to imagine what is possible. Imagine without the baggage of the past, because normally the baggage of the past says, I always did it this way. Can I do it incrementally better? Because that's how the human brain works. So you just have to break that, how it worked in the past, and think afresh, right? If I have to accomplish a task, how can I do it? And ask that question. Probably there is an algorithm somewhere that can do it for you. So I think from a paradigm shift perspective, it is in our thoughts of application. The tech itself is being driven by a completely different set of people. I don't think we need to bother about that. There are a lot of startups. I did some research for this discussion, as in Kerala right here, there are companies by very young people, 3-4 people teams, but doing extremely in-depth work. But for the audience of this discussion, I feel the focus should be more on application.
Great. I think you made a very important point that no, these shifts cannot be incremental, but it's going to be radical. And that is basically where the challenge comes when you look at the older economy industry. And I think you are a part of a digital transformation is one of them. We used to hear that the elephants take a lot of time to dance, but once they dance, then the whole thing changes. So what are those aspects of shifts in digital happening in an oil industry and specifically in oil industry, and maybe you can look at the industry as a whole, especially larger industry as a whole, because the larger shifts happen only when the larger industry adopts that. So what are those shifts which has happened?
So at BPCL, actually, the shift or the thrust has always been on innovation. That is one of our core values. And traditional IT, many of the things we were the first, like DCS or advanced process control. It was always leading. And then came in a kind of paradigm shift, you can say 2 years ago, when digital, like the summit theme says, progressing digital. So progress was not possible without going digital. That's what management realized. And then came in a shift wherein there was so much to explore in the world out there, so many technologies that were coming up, things like AI, ML, those were just words that were being heard of then. Traditionally, it had always been the code-based programming and manufacturing execution systems or multiple enterprise systems. But this was one area where there were so many technologies out there and so much to explore. And one shift was also that IT had always been traditionally with one department. But come digital, and it was no longer this purview of one department. It had to spread its tentacles throughout the organization or the entire functions, across the functions. So that was one more paradigm shift, can say, that happened. And we had IT and OT, the field, like we are in a refinery state. The refinery has its plant systems, operational technology. So the integration of IT and OT and how to do this in a very secure manner. That was the thought that started coming.
But before I go to Professor Kunjaria, but when you are looking at IT moving away from to the larger organization, there should also be resistances to this, right? So how do you actually manage that? Especially, the older industries are having a lot of manpower or human resources. And then the technology actually increases the productivity substantially, and many times your jobs comes down. So was there a challenge which is faced by the oil industry in that space?
Luckily, I would say last year was the game changer.
Okay.
So it was a boon in disguise. And COVID came to the rescue in one way. So what had to be thrust upon now became something like an enabler. People started reaching out.
Very good. In fact, I think for a common person, when you look at digital transformation, I think everybody started realizing about digital transformation when the COVID came, specifically when the schools got closed, and the education suddenly started coming into all our houses itself. Now, I know that as the Vice Chancellor of KTU, you are the one person who has made a substantial change in the way the IT can be adopted, digital can be adopted into the education system. Perhaps Kerala, first time the examination has been conducted on online and things like that. But having said that, education somehow has a paradox, because even though education institutions develop many of these newer changes, education institutions per se are many times reluctant to adopting the technology. So, sir, what is your perspective on that, and what do you think are some of the challenges which you faced, and what are those shifts which are happening in the days to come into this field?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Sanjay Gobinath, for asking the right question to me. And as he said earlier, this is probably after an year we are meeting for a panel on the dais. So I would like to tell you one thing, that in this digital transformation or the changes which are happening due to COVID or otherwise, especially with respect to digital, can have 1, 2, 3 phases. The first phase, everything together, I'm just telling you, I start from that, is something we call a paperless office, right? The second one, which normally what we call it as the digitalization, which is more into automation, more into AI, more into optimization, more user friendliness and things like that, right? Now the third phase, which is cultural transformation. Now, I would like to ask the audience also, or those who are listening to me, where are we now? Are we willing to take up a cultural transformation or not? This is the main problem which we are facing. Now, I come to the point, the real question which he has asked me. Where are we now with respect to education? Before going again to that, I just have a statistics. That's why I brought it. See, the Indian e-commerce, the annual growth rate is 27%. It will reach this year to a level of $99 billion. And by 2025, 220 million people in India will be doing online shopping. Whether we have achieved that is in the education or not is the question. See, I'll tell you, last March, 1 year back, I was heading the university, Hindustan University in Chennai. And after that, I just joined SIME about 6 months back. See, from both experiences which I had during this period, I will tell you, most of the good institutions across the country could make a change from the conventional face-to-face mode to an online mode of delivery of education. But whereas it was not possible with most of the conventional, probably some of the government, even some of the private, even to the school level, it could not do it. But what I wanted to tell is that good institutions, and good institutions in the sense those who have a branding, could do this change. Maybe all, even IIMs, IITs, all could do it. But a few institutions only could reach to that level where they have used digital technology for teaching, learning, delivery, even conduct of examination. That also could be done. In Kerala, if you take, I would say the school level, they started doing it, but we could have done much more better way. We could have. That doesn't mean that it's not I'm not blaming anybody. We could have done it better. Maybe that is something which probably would have, that will have a far-reaching effect later on in this. And I'll tell you one more thing is that, so what happened is whether it has affected financially this institution is also a question to be answered. But most of the institutions were not affected to that extent, but there were deferred payments, or the income which has come from the students has been deferred to a great extent, but they could manage the whole thing because the expenditure also has come down. Not to a great extent. So financially though, so altogether if you take, good institutions have not been, or branded institutions have not been affected to a great extent due to this COVID. They could do this shift or the changeover from the conventional phase-2 mode to the digital mode, even I would say better than an industry could do it. This is what my opinion about that.
Good. So I think
one thing which the cultural transformation, that is a point which I just wanted to ask. The question is that whether we have really reached to that point, whether we can accept all these changes or not, whether these changes will be sustainable, whether we will go into a face-to-face mode, again come back, or whether we will go into a blended form of education. The new education policy in the anvil of implementation, I'm sure that there has to be drastic changes in this, and this will will stop all this affiliating system, which is, there are a lot of resistance from. That is why we has said, I wanted to bring in that cultural transformation. So
you rightly use the word transformation. In fact, I think I think we need to discuss more detail on this concept of transformation per se, because we used to hear that when you automate a mess, you get a faster mess. But if you really wanted to make a transformation, it has to be much more in depth you need to do. So in various fields, is this which we are discussing? We have heard a large plethora of technologies is already there and is coming. These are all being discussed and it's already there in the air. But these are all being discussed primarily in the tech circles. But the real progress happens when the systems around adopts it. So I'll start with you on that. So while you put this question of deeper question of cultural transformation, is the digital transformation, is it real, or is it that because just a response to a pandemic? Pandemic goes, are we actually going back, or is it really depth and there is a substantive change in the way the world is going to be in the future? What do you think about it?
Yeah, that's a very good question actually. That is because the point which is to be done. See, my point is that we have made this change because of necessity. That is, cannot rule out that. Otherwise, we would not have done. The education is an area where changes have not happened for the last 100 years. But COVID has made it to have the change. Had there been no COVID, no change would have been there in the education field. So this is what. Now the question is that how much will it be elastic? How much transformation will remain residual one? How far it will reside? So that is what I wanted to tell you, that some of this will remain. So see, for example, I'll just tell, that's why I took this example of the online trading. See, even in online trading, people had a hesitation, doubt, whether I will get the real product or I will get a packet of brick instead of when I order a TV. Still people say, and this all our WhatsApp university is famous for all spreading rumors. So here the point, but I mean, after going into and experiencing, how do you get into the retailing? Now that you are convinced, similarly, this cultural transformation has to happen in the education also, so that you will, I mean, this kind of changes which happen. Because otherwise, if you don't do it, we will not be able to improve the quality of education. See, if I go further into this, I will tell that knowledge is available everywhere. It's available. That is why we have the Google. So you don't require a teacher for that. I mean, really, I'm telling you, the role of the teacher is going to be changed. The teacher is going to be a facilitator, not a knowledge transformer. So today what we do is we teach something and we will ask the same question to the student. No, that's not what is required. We have got to have a paradigm shift in that, in the teaching learning process, where the teacher has to be a facilitator and it has to be made into a student-centric one. Further, if I go further, we talk about, I mean, even see somebody, I mean, when we had the keynote speeches, we were telling about missing, I mean, when you work as a team in a software company, we miss the team activities because we don't meet, right? So here also, the students are missing that when you are not in the classroom. So probably the changes which are happening, or the virtual reality and augmented virtual reality, I may have the feeling that I'm sitting next to Mr. Tapan. So this is the change which has to happen probably in the days to come.
True. I think we'll come back to education a little later, maybe in the next round. But if you see this, the other side of the education, I will say that it is startups. Like when education institutions are still not adopted to the change, startups on the other hand are going ahead of the curve, right? And many times we used to hear about this sort of a transformation is not really organic, but primarily being driven by people who have got the tech knowledge. They are actually pulling. At least in the early stage of IT, we used to hear about this comment saying that, no, you really don't require this sort of a change, but because IT solutions are there, you are actually cutting your leg to the shoes which I am making. Now, do you have such similar issues in the case of digital transformation? Or is it also really a organic development for all sectors? I'm not speaking about education, but other sectors, where there is a substantive amount of problems which we face, and the solution, this transformation which we are speaking, actually can solve many of these exponential problems if applied properly. So what is your experience on this?
So with startups, the word is startup. So you can start two ways. You can look at a problem and say, this problem exists. What can I do to solve it, right? So, and then you examine what are the current solutions, what's right with it, what's wrong with it. And a lot of startups will follow the incremental approach, which is saying, okay, this problem is being solved this way. I can incrementally make it better and solve it another way. The ones that are really successful actually will look at the problem fresh, redefine it, and then look at available technologies and make a marriage of the two. That is the popular startups that you are seeing today. Consumer facing, business facing, the more, I would say, human startups. The third variety, which probably many of us will never see, is technology first. Technology first. Yes. So they don't address any particular problem. They will work on a new disruptive technology. Application will have to be found by industries that have the problem. So there is one in Kerala, a young guy, company called Nemo Planet. So he's developing a glass, right? It's not Google Glass. Google Glass was a gimmick for a while. You wear that glass and your work is where you are, right? You are able to replicate your workspace with multiple screens. So it could be a train. It could be right here in the conference. You get bored with the speech, you can just pull up your work, like nobody has to know. So you wear your glass, your keyboards are active. And so he was not really trying to solve any problem, as in the availability of that technology. And he uses the power of the phone to render the image that's coming from your actual server or desktop, which is way more powerful. So now that this technology is available, my first instinct, I work for Fidelity, which is a financial services company in the US, is if I'm a trader, I would love it, because I get to trade only 4 or 5 hours in a day when the markets are open. But I need to do a lot of research before the market opens. And I need to do a lot of post-mortem analysis after the market closes. And a lot of it coincides with my commute, with my coffee break and things like that. I can't carry my machines around, right? And the phones are super powerful, but the limitation is the screen is small, right? If I can pull up my screen that I was looking at work sitting in the train, I could. So he's developing a technology agnostic of the application, and it's my imagination of trying to use the technology for my solving my problems, right? So you will see all three types of startups. I am definitely within our portfolio in Kerala here. I'm definitely seeing companies that are making things that are being done physically. Can I move it digital? So classroom context, right? From a physical classroom, can I put Zoom? The teaching methods are the same. You're using whiteboard and you're with a one-to-many conversation. Nothing's really changed. My sense is those will all go back to normal. Because if you just converted from physical to digital, you will go back to physical, because the physical has advantages of being social and relationship building and all of that. The ones that are incrementally better than the earlier digital solutions, they will stay. They're here to stay. They will stay. The earlier ones will go away. The disruptive ones, many of us won't feel it for many years. I am getting a sense of that after having interacted with the startups. There is a lot of things in the labs. There are scary things in the labs, right? They can read your mind. Now, when that comes out, and we'll face it. So I would say 5-10 years out, the world could look very, very different from it looks today.
But is this products which startups makes or the services startup makes, are they going deep into the society or they remain only at specific levels? Because we still have agriculture as a key area. You have small trade, because I'm sure that there are people sitting here who are also from that, suffered substantially during this COVID crisis. But what type of, and digital transformation would be a great answer to many of those things. So how much of these solutions actually go into the depth of that?
Yeah, so there is a time lag really. Eventually, I saw the numbers of 330 million Indians with smartphones, right? You and I had smartphones 10 years back, right? But they will skip generations. Like India skipped the credit card generation. From cash, we directly went to UPI, right? So my sense is there are non-users today who will start with 5G. You and I saw 2G, 3G, 4G, and we'll see eventually 5G. But if I buy my first smartphone 2 years from today, I probably get a 5G directly. So the end user adoption will have a time lag. The technology, the person who develops the technology is almost always agnostic to adoption, and they're doing it for the sake of, now it is for agencies like government, right? To make sure that application happens. In the startup world, I also see a lot of application-oriented startups. When they start with the problem. If they start with the problem, then we have, like I met the founder of the Farmers Fresh. His starting point was farmers are not getting enough for what they're growing because there are too many intermediaries in the cycle, which means if I can cut some of them and directly go to consumer, the consumer may even be willing to pay a little bit more because of the philanthropic angle to his spend. I'm going to buy my tomato onion anyway, right? If I know that my money is going directly to a farmer, I don't mind a premium, or at least I don't mind a market price. So if those people that are starting with problems that are in the society today and using today's technology look very different from people that are trying to develop tomorrow's technology without any sense of the application of the tech. So the balance is 80-20. So I would think, I want to be optimistic here. We will solve problems, but we'll probably have a time lag than when they were supposed to be.
It may not be that fast or that.
Because in the end, everybody is commercially motivated. So wherever there is higher commercial outcome, a startup, an investor in a startup actually follows that path quicker. And then there is a trickle down effect of that tech to the need.
Yeah, I think that is, I actually wanted to take it from there because we used to hear about many new technologies, blockchains, the quantum computing, which has been spoke about. But if you look at traditional industries, I know that oil industry is not necessarily traditional, but I meant by traditional is very large turnover, large volume, lot of manpower, that sort of industries. They generally absorb technologies when they are more mature. The blockchain is a classic example. We all speak about blockchain as going to be very transformative technology, which can actually remove inefficiencies. But still, companies are only adopting POCs. There is not much companies which have really adopted that. So, from a person who is coming from a digital, from such sort of a companies, do you think that these transformative technologies are going to come very fast into this space, or it will take time? You look at even in the financial sector, there are great examples. There are companies who have adopted and then grew very fast. There are companies who still go for conventional technologies, looking at the technology maturity and then absorb it. So what do you feel about this transformation? Is it going to be a very long-term transformation, or is it going to be a very short-term, can be very fast?
I would say like in the whole bunch of technologies, there would be some that would be adopted at a very fast pace. Something where we are already there, say IIoT.
Yes.
So IIoT has been there, and we have also got a lot of data. That's a whole lot of data out there. So how do we leverage on that? That is IIoT, and then marrying it with, say, artificial intelligence or the machine learning part of it and leveraging that. That would be quite a fast adoption as compared to something like virtual reality. And just to add a perspective from industry on what Dr. Kunjaria said. So when it came to learning, so in the industry now we have both things. We have classroom sessions. We also have some sessions on safety. Safety being the prime most important thing in a refinery. So for safety, we had introduced something in virtual reality. We thought it would make an immersive experience, something that will leave an impact, and a lot of takeaways would be there. We started on this last year, but again, here was something where it fell back on adoption. Mostly due to COVID, it will again take up, but still it will take some time in proving itself because of the amount of people that are there. We are requires like one-to-one experience or this. How do we cover everybody? Will everybody accept it in the same manner? So those are challenges. Then coming to computer vision. So that is something, one more area which we see that there may be quick adoption. There are a lot of cases on computer vision, on security side, intruder detection, or even something in the operations, like understanding how the flare is using computer vision. So these applications, I see that they'll come up very fast as compared to the other.
Okay, so let me now move, before I open up for questions from the audience. I think we will have a participation. Just one last question to you from my end before we open up. There is another important area, because at the end, this transformation has to be driven by people, and that has to be trained by our own institutions. How much equipped does our institutions into this? Because at one end, the industry is actually speaking about going very, very differently, looking at transformation. The other end, our curricula, our students, are they actually being trained in this? Is there an industry institute? Every discussion we speak about this, but in reality, what is happening? Is there something which that gap is reducing, or is it widening?
Because today we have a lot of industry people also here from the academy also. This problem, or I would say the issue of industry institute interaction, we have been discussing for quite long. Of late, I am of the firm opinion that this partnership between industry and institute is happening. That partnership is happening. But there is a small issue again that the industries want graduates who can really do the job which they are doing at the moment. I differ on that. Because if I train somebody for that kind of a job, he will not be suitable for a transformation to happen within himself to take up a job which the technology will bring in after 5 years of time. So we can only create people, graduates who are generic in nature, who can learn anything the technology brings in over a period of time. So that should be the attitude of the industries rather than getting ready-made engineers. But again, we have a vocational education part of it, which may bring in, I mean, the job roles of the people will change. I mean, the industries can change the job roles and get people trained in the particular job roles to be employed for a specific job which requires specific skills. So that is another vertical, which is the vocational education. The other one is a different kind of higher education, which we talk about generally. So these two will have to be treated separately. And this vocational education space will occupy maybe more than the conventional university education. Both are universities now, because vocational also you can get a degree, bachelor in vocational education, BVoc and MVoc. So this gap, what the industries complain, I would say is less. But probably my request to the industries is that the CSR component will have to be increased, and the industries will have to partner with the institutes, set up something like research parks, community, parks and things, the ones which the industries as well as the students could be trained in specific tasks and assignments. So that way we can further make, when you talk about industry 4.0, the university 4.0 will also happen, so that both are benefited by this process, which can happen much better way through this digitalization process. This digital technology will bring in a lot of things, because we talk about simulation. If a pilot to fly an aircraft can be trained in a simulator, I mean, both that, the other one is also there initially, he's trained in that. If that can happen, we can also will have to, the industries and the academic institutions will have to join together to develop such simulations or simulated equipments to train the students, the students in the both one. But whatever we say, our aim has to be to create creative students who can think different. That only will help the things to happen either in the startup or in conventional job roles. The students, the graduates can fare better. So that will be the way we will have to calibrate or reframe our curriculum, so that the students will have to think differently. So I told about the knowledge. The knowledge is available everywhere. We have the MOOC, the Coursera, SWAYAM platform, all are available. The skill part of it, you will get it only from the campus. So that you have to be in the campus, neither way. That is no other way right now. Otherwise, our technology will have to change and get into that. But the industries can contribute to a greater extent. The collaboration. Mr. Dinesh is here. So he is very eager to help the educational institutions to have collaborative arrangements, so that they will partner with the institutions, which will help the students much better way, so that they will get benefited. So all the industries will have to rise to that level so that this gap will get reduced and nobody will blame the other person. I mean, that blaming part will stop.
So what is your reflection on that? Do you think that we are getting more day one
Actually,
engineers?
The world has a way of segregating this. What he's talking about is a learnability as a skill,
Yes.
right? Then what the knowledge is doesn't matter. The knowledge is free. It's abundant. If you see in the world of startups, interestingly, almost every founder is working in a field that he didn't have any formal education. Like the guy who's doing Farmers Fresh is a software engineer, right? The person I met, this pre-magic guy, he is a civil engineer and he's doing photography transfer business. So it is learnability as this. If I had to teach my kids something like that, is the single most important skill, because the knowledge has a tendency to be relevant only for a certain period of time, right? As in that shift happens, in which case the only thing you bring to the table is learning. Like in my field, the AI/ML field, the data field, technology changes every 6 months. Like before industries have had a chance to adapt, tech has changed again. The tech cycle is so short that you can't say I will go get some formal knowledge, because the minimum duration for a AI/ML course nowadays is like 6 months to 1 year. But tech has changed 3 times in that time frame, right? So I think it is very beautifully said it, that you should be willing to learn whatever is coming next, because the knowledge is free. I'm totally on board with this idea.
And this difference between the skill and knowledge, which he spoke about, do you feel that happening in the new recruits who are being tasked with this, the transformational changes?
Yeah, definitely. It is there. But another aspect is they are also, given the experience that comes from the seniors, blended with their enthusiasm and probably the knowledge that they come in, very quickly they are able to adapt to it. That is one more
Which
thought
is good.
on it.
Which I think is
Yes.
the key thing. Now, before we have two more aspects to discuss, but before that, I think we'll open up. One is we need to look at whether we have an infrastructure, which is also important to drive this, and specifically how this transformation is going to affect each of those various professions which we are involved in. But before that, I think if some questions are there from audience, we can take it up, and then we'll have I think we have another 15 minutes, I believe. So we'll have one round of questions and then we'll have one more round of discussion.
My question is about startup. Yes, most of this, am I audible? Yeah, most of the startups are technology oriented, which is very good. That's what we've been aiming for, whichever domain they're working. But what I would like to know from you is, what are we doing in terms of bringing them up in, managing people or strategizing or financial management, or that is something which is very much essential going forward than just the technology or IP related things that we start off with, because most of them are young people. So how are we doing that?
Yeah, so very good question. Actually, I have been only 3 weeks in the job, so you'll have to give me that benefit. What Dr. Saji here and the team have done wonderfully over the last 5-6 years is build up the spirit of entrepreneurship. So a 14-year-old today, a 16-year-old, and when they're in engineering college, I've seen so many successful startups that have come out from engineering college. Yesterday, somebody got $10 million funding for a spirulina-based cookie, an algae-based cookie. So we have now close to 3,000 startups, right? And they have reached a stage where I would say about 100, 150 of them are ready to graduate. And that is when all the other aspects come in, because teams so far have been 5-6 people, money, there is an angel investor who's been managing their money. They've been very friendly with that. But there are at least last count, maybe 17, 18 companies that are doing $1 million or more, which is 7 crore, or sorry, a crore or more. And if I count it a little harder, it'll probably go to about 40 to 50 companies that have reached that stage. Now there are elements of business that they need to be now educated on. So one of the things that I'm taking up right now is called a startup to scale up, which is you have started up, you have survived the most difficult part of an enterprise, which is the first few years of just breathing, right? It's like how a child is born. You know, you have to breathe and get some food. But now you got to scale up. And when you scale up, most of the skills required are non-tech skills, like exactly how you said it. Interaction with employees, interaction with stakeholders, understanding market, understanding pricing, how to hire, who to hire, even setting some organizational values, organizational principles, purpose, why do we exist? We are taking up that as a program for all the startup mission companies that have reached a certain threshold in terms of size. And a proxy for size is revenue, but we could use other proxies as well. But that's a program in the making. And your point is totally taken. It's just that the time lag was required. You had to create enough startups. You had to create that spirit for companies to emerge. And then when they reached a certain size, now you taught them what is required for the next size. And I'm putting together a mentor network of people that are from the industry who can now mentor these startups. So it will not be like we'll not be able to hire 100 people to manage, grow 1,000 startups, but we will take people's time and expertise to be able to mentor them. I hope I answered your question.
Sir, I have a way to comment on Kunjaria's statement. Sir was explaining the evolution of digitalization in the academic sector, education sector, like paperless office, digitalization, cultural transformation. So I just want to add one point, that is before this cultural transformation, there must be a mental revolution among the academicians, because there must be a change in the mindset and attitude. Then only this cultural transformation will be sustainable. Kunjaria sir happened to be the member secretary of ICT also earlier. See, ICT and UGC has tried their level best to propagate this online education, digital education, but nothing happened. But when UGC and ICT miserably failed, Corona could do that. But there is a point. Students and teachers belong to two different generations. As far as students are concerned, they adopted technology. For teachers, it was imposed due to the present situation, which means when the situation changes, they will go back. Sustainability won't be there unless and otherwise there is a mental revolution. So would it be better to say digitalization, then a mental revolution, then cultural transformation? Then only that transformation will be sustainable.
See, I have nothing to answer. You have rightly said all those points. But one thing, I just wanted to question one thing. 1 year is over. The way things move, 1 more year, the schools and colleges are not going to get open to that normal. So 1 more year, it may bring in rather larger cultural changes and digital changes together. Probably we will have. See, most of the schools have not functioned this year in the digital way even. See, one aspect I wanted to tell. See, there were a lot of people who have complained that the student cannot sit on a TV to listen to the lecture for not more than 45 minutes. I totally disagree to that point. You give a movie, he will watch the movie. 3 movies you give, the student will sit in the movie on this one for 12 hours. But when this was told that the student has to attend a class, all people started telling that the student cannot. I could not understand. But you give a movie, he will. So the only way round with us, the academicians, is you make movies and teach. Yeah, but that is the only way. So that is how we can transform. We can make this cultural change. So that is something which we have got to bring in with the help of AI, blockchain, AR, VR, and things like that. And our startups will help in bringing in new technologies. And the one question which you asked is relevant, no? Don't think that technology alone, a person. That is why an engineering student is taught economics, finance, and management. Similarly, now a liberal arts student, and that's the terminology which is coming, should be taught all digital tools. I would say the spreadsheet, the Excel is the first thing which should be taught to any student. So he should be taught the technology, even some lessons of engineering should also be taught. So that is why we say that hereafter we will not have digital university or technological university or Sanskrit university or Malayalam university. Every university will have all specialization happening in that university, wherein all what is required for a person to make a living, make innovations to happen, inventions to happen. See, you learn things not by studying engineering alone. When you go, we always say one thing, it is better for an engineering student to go and attend a seminar in sociology or anthropology so that he get more ideas to incubate new things.
I just want to add to that what Professor Kunjaria said. I think this period also brought in a lot of interesting innovations by few teachers, which also showed that you now have a few people who can actually replace a lot of bad teachers. And I think with the environment, with the new NEP which speaks about the transfer of credits, etc., it may evolve that you will have few people who are good who are going to drive that. So that may be the disruption which is happening in the education system. So we hear about the Google and others coming out with newer courses, which need not necessarily following the common university curriculum. So such changes are definitely happening, and they will actually going to happen into the big world. But I think any other questions?
There's one last question. This is online, so I'll just read out the question for the person. The person who's asked is Jose William, Kunel Engineers and Contractors. We have a lot of identification numbers like Aadhaar card numbers, voters ID, passport, driving license, etc. Can we have one identification number and integrate all applications into that number? When will the government take initiative on that?
I think I can answer this. There was a case, very, very famous case in which the Honorable Supreme Court has ruled out, saying that you cannot make a 360-degree data sphere of a person in the country. That actually, in fact, Aadhaar was originally intended to be of that model, but because the Supreme Court has primarily had a verdict against that, that's not possible. Having said that, we today speak about intelligent government, where the data at multiple places of the government can come together, and government can actually use very innovative solutions built out of it. So that is what we call as India. Indian enterprise architecture will be a common infrastructure. On the top of it, you will have these applications which will interact, and you can get intelligence out of it. Hopefully that is going to get implemented. So I think we have one minute. Okay, so we'll just close this interesting discussion. I believe that I think all of us agree that the transformation is going to happen, and whether we like it or not, there was a joke that what a CIO could not do in several years, a virus could do it in a week's time, and that's very true. And in that context, I think many of the things have actually moved away from the earlier things. And some of these industries have actually started reaping the gains of that, the oil industry being one of them. And also we have seen a large number of new inventions coming from newer companies, startups, etc. But if the society as a whole has to progress, there is going to be a massive transformation which is required. And this is basically where I think the haves and have not. Here the haves and have not is not with respect to the resource availability, but more with the knowledge of this whole happen much more closely. Hopefully, the benefits people have adopted in this last few months, especially when they were able to resurrect their businesses through the digital means, is going to be a way forward for that. And organizations like KMA can play a very significant role in ensuring that continues. I think that's basically where we will close. Any other last one sentence to close?
I think one important thing in all this, or impediment in this digital transformation or whatever it is the digital divide. Yeah, that we have not discussed. Only 50% of the people have access to internet. So that is the main problem which we are facing. Everybody, I mean, you say that everybody has the mobile. That doesn't mean that it is data. That speed is not sufficient for you to transact. So this is something which is a digital divide, is something which has to be closed. So I would say, though my field is transportation engineering, I'm willing, I would like to have more roads to be built. Kerala is, we have only narrow roads. We should have done it much earlier. So we should not miss the boat of the digital, I mean, internet, what is that? The information highway. Yeah. So the information highway at least should be built right at the moment.
I feel there's a little bit of individual accountability here. Governments will do at their own pace. I'm starting to see how governments work, but each of us have that knowledge gap to also bridge. So each one teach one actually goes a very long way. Whoever it is, if it is your kids, or have them teach you something, because our kids today know more than we do. Or you teach somebody where you know a little bit more than they do, right? I think that will go a long way. None of this is very structured curriculum type of stuff. It's using equipment, using a piece of software, using an app, right? I think we can individually do a lot as
well. 2 points. One is on the data. So good data. That is when we say we use systems, garbage in, garbage out. The focus of we have a lot of data, humongous amount of data. But there's also certain thought that goes into the data governance, say, or the strategy behind getting the good quality data from that mountain of data. And second thing is, yeah, leveraging on that data. Thank you. Steps out. Let me do the honors, the one honors that I missed last time, which was we would need, I would request President Madhav and Mr. A. Balakrishnan to step up to the stage. So you'll finally see that the specially curated memento that we have is an actual photo of the discussion that happened live. And we're very glad to be able to give it away in person. I think this audience is not clapping, and I only think yes or no. So after such a elaborate discussion, it stretched our mind in all directions. I think we need a bigger round of applause. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. It is time for a valedictory address, all too soon. While we have Mr. Rajiv Prakash, CEO of Deshpande Group Startups, as a valedictorian, I would like to invite Mr. Bibu Punnuran, Director of Mediation Group of Diagnostics and Treasurer, Kerala Management Association, to please step up to the stage.
Good evening, one and all. President Madhav, Chairman of the Summit, ABK, other dignitaries present here, invited guests. We've had a very enlightening evening, I must say, with all the plethora of great speakers this evening. And now it's time for the valedictory. And we have none other than Mr. Rajiv Prakash, CEO of Deshpande Startups, to address us. Let me get into my duty of introducing him. Rajiv has 30 years of experience across entrepreneurship development, internet business, business consulting, and financial services in firms such as KPMG, Anderson, Future Group, Cisco, and Bank of America. He is the CEO of the Hubali-based Deshpande Startups, known as DS, India's largest incubator, having assumed this role in November 2020. DS is a technology-based incubator supported by the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. DS has an unique model that focuses on entrepreneurship development in smaller cities and rural areas in domains such as agri-tech, health tech, fintech, and edutech. In 2016, Rajiv commenced an association with DS as a board director. Since then, he has been closely associated with strategy development, program design, and business reviews for DS. He handled several seed stage investments for DS. In 2010, Rajiv started Nextin, an entrepreneur-first boutique advisory practice to help select category creating startups to scale. He has helped over 20 startups scale over multi-year deep engagements with founders apart from mentoring relationships with several more. Many of these deep engagement startups have emerged as market leaders in categories such as Indian language technologies, rural distribution, blue collar livelihoods, software as a service, mobile payments, civic capacity building, etc. These include ventures such as Rivery, acquired by Geo, Martjack, acquired by Capillary, Boonbox, acquired by Venture East, Oreos, Reap Benefit, Musambi, acquired by Sidbi or funded by Sidbi, and Goli Vada Pav, again acquired by Venture East. Rajiv has also advised established enterprises such as Future Group, Pidilite, and Dampur Sugar startup and leverage open innovation. Prior to Nextin, he was the CEO at Future Group's e-commerce venture, Future Bazaar, funded by Kleiner Perkins and Sherpalo, and a pioneer in electronics e-commerce. Earlier, he co-founded a retail technology venture in partnership with Future Group, which grew up to rupees 100 crores revenues business with 500 plus employees. Before Future Group, Rajiv led national and regional consulting practices at Cisco, KPMG, and Anderson in domains such as technology and business services and retail. At KPMG, he was an international leader responsible for setting up a cross-border sourcing advisory practice. Rajiv has taught entrepreneurship and e-commerce related courses at the MBA programs at SP Jain and Symbiosis. He's a postgraduate diploma in management from the IIM Ahmedabad. With this, let me introduce Rajiv Prakash, CEO, Deshpande Startups, our speaker from now on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bibi, for a very, very warm welcome and for the introduction. I'll just move on to my presentation. If you can just give me a moment, please. Is the presentation visible and am I audible? Yeah, I just want to confirm, is the presentation visible and am I audible enough?
Yes, sir. You are audible.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
once again, thanks for the very warm welcome. And I am actually quite delighted to be speaking today at the valedictory session. Okay, for two important reasons. One, I do spend a lot of time in the world of startups, and to speak to an audience from Kerala, which has been ranked as the top performer, okay, in the startup ecosystem for 2 consistent years, okay, means that we are talking about a state with a very rich base of new age entrepreneurship, and with a number of startups doing well in the B2B and B2C segments. And that's a very important resource. And second is KMA is one of the oldest and most respected management associations with a very rich base of corporates across SMEs and large sectors. And I think the topic today is about building bridges across these 2 sectors. So winning in the digital age. Now, it might appear to be quite counterintuitive that when we look at what newspapers sometimes call as traditional businesses, which is a lot of the corporates and SMEs, media often thinks that the future belongs to startups. And if you are a business which was formed around 15, 20 years and before, there's not much of right to win, because in many ways, okay, in the digital age, much will be taken up, has already been taken up by startups and unicorns and many other such creatures. I would like to argue otherwise. I still believe, okay, that companies, okay, who have been established earlier come with a very strong skill sets. There are very strong assets, and they will be able to navigate the digital age. But they need new strategies for doing so. And one of the strategies that I would like to talk about today is the entire idea of open innovation. Mark Andreessen, the inventor of the browser, which has changed much of how we use the internet, and also the co-founder of what is arguably one of the world's most successful venture capital firms ever, which is Andreessen Horowitz, famously said a few years ago that software is eating the world, and it continues to eat so. He did not say software is just eating code or technology. He said software is eating the world, which means across sectors, whether these be business sectors or cultural, political, educational, there is software which is becoming part of almost everything that we experience and do. And much of this is being driven by startups in one way or the other. Now, looking at the way startup software is eating the world, many of the CEOs and founders of traditional businesses, which are the typical corporation SMEs, were initially at least 5 or 10 years, many of them would have been in a denial mode that this is not going to happen. But over the last 2-3 years, one has seen enough of the leaders starting to accept that they have to transform digitally, that they have to start adding digital capability. But it has always been important, but never too urgent, because there have always been many other priorities, as what one would normally expect in any business in terms of competing, managing current employees, exploring new markets. So digital has always been important, and often there would probably be a digital transformation officer or a digital cell, okay, working on some of these initiatives. Very often, the focus of these initiatives would also be more around achieving certain plaudits within internal audiences, where about how can we show within an internal audience that we managed to create an app, we managed to create a website. So it has a strong ritualistic element. But I think many of the founders saw that as natural stages in a journey of becoming digitally capable. But in most cases that I've spoken to, people had a view of acquiring a level of digital capability, which is a level of mastery, by somewhere between 2023 and 2025. And all of a sudden, COVID just threw a spanner in the works. According to various researchers, COVID has accelerated digital adoption by anywhere between 3 to 5 years. So the 2023 or the 2025 that you were preparing for has become 2020 and 2021. Across the board, we have a lot more people now connected, doing many more things on the internet for a lot more time. And these are only the first order effects. The second order and third order effects of this hyperconnectivity, including in countries like India, is only going to be discovered over the next 6 to 12 months. Further, we are also seeing the growth of the Indian language internet, which, like China, will primarily bring internet connectivity and usage across the masses and not just make it an English-speaking metro phenomenon. Further, we have the government itself pushing digital adoption in a very large way. And given the fact that we are dealing with very large volumes of liquidity around the world, and much of that is going to startups. So much of the unviable also becomes viable in the startup sense. So basically, if you are a corporate CEO, okay, you have a pretty difficult situation. At one level, you very clearly see the value of getting into the digital world. You see the value of what it takes to become digital. You can explore new opportunities, enter many new markets by looking at Amazon as a channel. You can understand your existing customers better. You can reduce your costs. If you're manufacturing, you can reduce your defects very significantly. You can engage with people better. So the use cases about what digital can do, okay, there's a lot of clear vision around that in the mind of most of the CEOs and founders. But then how do you actually accelerate capability? Because the 3 years that you had in your kitty or the 5 years has now effectively become negative time. So when we go about talking to many of the leaders across businesses and across industry associations, one big challenge is not about capability development, but about the acceleration of capability development. And so far, the normal assumption has been that I have to do all of this internally. Either I have an existing technology department or I start a digital transformation department. But I would argue that the time for such strategies, okay, is now a little bit limited. Second is that we've always seen the lens of corporate versus startups in some kind of a competitive frame. I think the time has now come to start looking at corporates and startups as somebody who are complementary forces. I would look at startups as basically digital natives in the digital age. They understand how to basically create exponential impact. They understand how to use exponential resources to create that particular impact. And very often are people who understand that word in a very different way. Their ideas of organization, their ideas of processes, their ideas of how do you solve problems are very, very different. On the other hand, if you take digital immigrants, which is basically traditional businesses, they come with solid strengths in the form of existing customer base, a lot of financial resources, very strong industry knowledge, and a level of maturity acquired over many years, though much of that may not be relevant going forward. So what I would like to basically propose is an idea of open innovation, where corporates and startups can work with each other for mutual benefit. But why would they need each other? For example, corporates, the case is clear that corporates do want to accelerate their entire digital transformation. But for startups, it is becoming interesting. In the last 5 to 7 years, we have seen the surge of B2B startups. A lot of the startup activity which happened somewhere after 2008-10, post Make My Trip, Clear Trip, was largely been in the consumer space. But post 2007-8, typically post Lehman Brothers, we've seen a significant number of startups which are getting into software as a service, B2B product companies or B2B2C companies. And for many of these startups, it is important that they land up getting customers, okay, on where they can validate their solutions, get their first paying customers. And these startups are also looking at using India as a sandbox, and they want to then take their products globally. So for them to get a solid base of customers where these products can be tested and the use cases validated becomes very important. And that automatically creates this kind of a win-to-win opportunity where startups need the corporates and the corporates can work with startups and in a way graft a certain level of digital capability within the organization to accelerate. So open innovation is basically a symbiotic approach wherein a company opens its doors, okay, to innovation, which can come from anywhere, can be startups, okay, can be freelancers, and many other such sources. Let me take an example to show how it worked in one case. So this is a case study from Hubli. So, I mean, we all familiar with the humble gherkin, which is a very small cucumber, which in India is most often a vegetable, but in the US, they can't get enough of it, okay, especially when they make it into pickles, which could be salted or sweet. India is one of the largest exporter of gherkins, close to around 2,000 crores, okay, of exports each year. But we have a unique problem where the Indian gherkin is susceptible, okay, to infestation by the fruit fly, which comes and lays an egg, and within 7 days, okay, they become maggots. it is these 7 days when actually gherkin farmers are able to pluck the gherkins, and the gherkin processing units are supposed to do quality inspection and put them into bottles of brine. Okay, from there they can be exported. But very often what happens is, because much of it is manual and manual visual inspection, you cross those deadlines, and by which point of time, okay, the eggs start becoming maggots, and you have very large parts of the consignment, okay, where you actually have maggot formation take place. Now, this actually affects exporters in a fairly large way, because if they are not careful and they send defective shipments, they could get banned by their importers and customers for as many as 6 months. And further, the entire industry gets a bad name. And Germany, other countries always competing, and Germany does not have a fruit fly problem. So the Indian Gherkin Exporters Association has been trying to look for solutions over here. Now you can imagine a Gherkin Exporter Association to be as traditional as they come, right? I mean, for them, even their website is bare bones. So we have a startup called Wide Mobility, which is basically a digital radiography startup. So they bring in computer vision, X-rays, and they're able to see inside things. So they discovered the Gherkin Association, and they decide to take a bet on the startup to come up with technology which will help them to peek inside the gherkin and start figuring out which of these gherkins have gone bad and significantly improve quality. So in 2017, they started working together on prototypes, where the Exporter Association provided seed money, provided the knowledge and the problem statement, and Wide Mobility started making these machines. So they had to combine mechanical engineering skills, okay, along with a lot of digital knowledge, okay, to come up with a solution. Over the course of 2017 to 2018, the Gherkin Association leaders, along with 2 anchor companies, worked closely with Wide Mobility to provide them a lot of data, gave them physical sites where these machines could be built and prototypes tested. They gave them an advance against 1 or 2 orders. And in the process, okay, they worked together over a period of 12 to 18 months to co-create, okay, a machine, okay, which would come with, number one, a high level of quality, and also a lot of throughput, because you need to be able to process the gherkins very fast. From 2019 to 2020, they were able to perfect the machine, whereby it could start performing to the levels and at a level of scale. Now, today, Wide Mobility has got 3 orders from the Gherkin Association, okay, each order being of significant value of in 8 digits. And in the process, they probably see anywhere between a 50 to 100 crore market within India. On the other side, for the Gherkin Association, okay, they have reached a level of quality where defects can be brought down by almost 80 to 90%. So this is what I call symbiotic open innovation, where there's a level of resourcefulness on both the sides, a trust on both the sides to work together. Now, the Gherkin Association has got no clue what digital radiography and all those things are, but it knows what good outcomes are, while Wide Mobility brings a technology knowledge. And I think in this particular case study lies examples of how we can start looking at traditional businesses, okay, work along with startups and solve in a very exponential way for mutual benefit. And I would probably have typically taken case studies from the US and a bunch of other places. But I think our startup ecosystem today has matured enough where we got dozens and scores of examples, okay, within our country itself. So my suggestion, okay, to the companies over here would be, let's start looking at startups as partners and see how we can start solving problems together. And there are many, many other opportunities, okay, which are exponential in nature. Jeevitam, a startup, recently powered IBM's CSR. IBM wanted to basically help during COVID times a bunch of the European markets in CSR. Jeevitam runs a digital job fair platform. They took the digital job fair platform to at least 10 European countries. Samunati is aggregating agri-tech startups and offering them to farmer produce corporations who in turn need innovation because they have to try and do things better and better for their farmers. At Future Group, at FuturePay, we did acqui-hire. We acquired a small startup and that powered our entire FuturePay product and took it amongst the payment wallets to anywhere between number 3, number 4 in the country. Then you got people like Boonbox who are working with microfinance companies and helping them to get into product finance. And as a result of that, almost increasing their spread by 3 to 4 times. So what you can see over here is that number of examples where there are startups working along with an established traditional company and creating very strong win-win opportunities. And I think the best example of this happens to be in the fintech sector. And Kerala itself is a place with a number of strong BFSI companies. BFSI, banking and financial services, for the longest time has been one of the strongest adopter of technologies. And we've seen people like Yes Bank and others who are kind of creating these kind of centers of digital innovation to get startups working with the core of the business ecosystem. So when you are a corporate and you want to figure out, okay, where is it that you want to work with a startup? Okay, there are numerous opportunities. What you're seeing right now over here is something which has come from Steve Blank's customer development cycle. And this is typically how a startup solves. And you'll find that startups solve problems very differently than what we might in traditional businesses. And there's a very strong dance which constantly happens with the customer. What I've marked over here in the first two boxes out here is where the startup is working with an idea to prototype, and the prototype goes to validation. Much of it is unknown, and it's very important to work with context. These are the kind of examples where a company can work with a startup, like in the Gherkin case, and they can co-create a solution, and in a way get a solution which is more matching their needs. In the subsequent two boxes, you're dealing with startups which have got more mature solutions, and where you as a company can look at that startup for creating a new business model for you, which is what happened in case of microfinance, okay, where microfinance companies like Arohan and Annapurna worked with Boonbox and got into the product finance business and automatically be able to basically get a lot more loan books at a much higher spread and covering many more customers. So there are two ways, okay, that companies can use open innovation to work with startups, and both are feasible because you might have a variety of use cases. So what else can companies do, okay, if they want to leverage open innovation? There are some very interesting examples, okay, especially among larger companies who have created formal open innovation programs where they run probably programs every 6 months, where they invite startups to become part of a cohort, and they connect the startup to a lot of opportunities within the company. Some very interesting ones are ones like Marico Innovation Foundation, where they take startups in the scale stage, and they get senior executives from Marico to work with the startups. In the process for Marico, apart from basically making this a part of CSR, Marico's top executives now get an insight into how startups think, how startups work, and collectively for Marico, the digital acumen starts going up. If you take someone like Future Group started an open innovation program called C&D Labs, which was run by one of the younger members of the family. And what I realized with the program is that it was providing, okay, the next generation of Future Group very strong exposure to the digital startup ecosystem. Very often in family-owned businesses, okay, the next generation typically either follows whatever is happening or is responsible more for some of the investments in real estate or retail, but not necessarily provided an opportunity to start up or reinvent certain things. By creating an open innovation program, you can protect your entrepreneurial assets within the family by making them operate at the cusp between your enterprise and where startups are. So we are seeing, like I said, more corporate open innovation programs, which might be interesting to some of you. Then companies can also leverage new platforms which are coming in. Aadhaar and India Stack itself is one for BFSI. The government's e-marketplace. Then platforms like Udaan offer new opportunities for B2B companies. Zomato has allowed a number of restaurants to go online. And Nandan Nilekani has started societal platforms, which is taking the Aadhaar model and taking it to education, agriculture. So we're going to become very soon a platform-rich country. So one of the things you might want to do as a founder or CEO or a CXO of a traditional business is, when you have this multitude of platforms available to you, to try and figure out what does it mean for you as a business, and look at which are the startups which can help you connect to those platforms and make the most of the platform and new distribution channels. The other thing is to crowdsource. I mean, Kerala Startup Mission has done numerous numbers of hackathons and datathons and given their startups exposure to opportunities in many, many places. So just imagine, okay, within Kerala itself, you could have crowdsourcing platforms, which brings a lot of hackathons and datathons, etc., and starts connecting them to companies within Kerala. And as a result of that, these become crowdsourcing platforms, okay, for Kerala organizations and also by Kerala startups. Look at startup challenges. The Startup India portal at various times puts out challenges by companies, which are then put out to the entire startup ecosystem. So let's say, suppose you have a problem in manufacturing where you want to do something about quality defects, or you want it, or let's say the tourism sector is looking for a very different kind of solution to deal with tourist flow post-COVID, or you have something in education. Identify a challenge, put it out, get startups to bid for it, and work along with startups. The same crowdsourcing model is also being used to source ideas inside organizations. I mean, there are platforms like Hacker Earth who are doing some very interesting work along with corporates in terms of solving these problems inside and outside. Also, if you're a business, okay, and if you're a founder or a CEO of a business, you probably also want to start getting deeper exposure to the startup ecosystem by becoming an angel investor. Apart from the fact that it gives you a chance on the upside, it also gives you a lot of exposure to the kind of startups which are coming in, what kind of ideas, what are the ideas which are getting validated, how are people solving, and in the process, improve the digital acumen that is there inside the organizations, look at potential strategic partnerships, and also form connections with many other angel investors and understand how are they solving the problem. So keeping some amount of money aside for angel investment and also keeping some amount of money aside for strategic investment in startups could very well go a long way. But as always, do take professional advice. The other thing is, suppose you were to do angel investing and crowdsourcing, it also improves or provides your brand within the digital native world. Because at some point of time, you also want to start acquiring startup type people to come inside your company. What can be a better way of attracting them than to actually be part of their world so that they become curious enough to become part of your organization and in a way start seeding in a certain level of digital native acumen, okay, within that system. So like this, there are many other opportunities, okay, which are available for traditional businesses to leverage the startup ecosystem and startups, including co-working. For example, the Kerala Startup Mission has got fantastic space across 3 or 4 cities. Perhaps traditional businesses may want to create a certain labs unit and co-locate the labs where other startups are and have enough amount of osmosis, okay, to learn. Hire ex-entrepreneurs, either as consultants or members of the company. Have more exposure visits for your employees. If required, second your employees to a startup so they start understanding how it works. Then if it's an academic institution, globally there's a program that Deshpande Foundation developed along with the US government called ICOPS, okay, where you have senior professors who have a lot of IP, come along with an entrepreneur and a mentor and commercialize that IP by using a startup. We have brought that particular program to IIT Madras and IIT Bombay with great results. And in the process, a lot of the IP, which typically is there inside academic institutions, they start seeing, okay, more market exposure. In some cases, you might even take an interesting capability, what you have internally, and convert that into a startup. So one of our startups comes from Belgaum, where you have this SME entrepreneur, okay, who is in manufacturing. And for the longest time, he's had the pain that he has to work between WhatsApp and SAP, okay, because for them, managing tasks, okay, looking at how things are happening within the organization does not merit ERP, but it's more mature than what WhatsApp has to offer. So as they say, you have to scratch your itch. So he took that particular problem, he's converted that into a startup, and apart from solving his own problem, is taking that product to also other companies in Belgaum. So this is another way that you can leverage the startup ecosystem to convert your own idea into a product. So as we can see, working collaboratively with the startup ecosystem and for startups to work along with enterprises creates significant exponential opportunities. But you can't work with a startup like a vendor. There's got to be a leap of faith and there's got to be a win-win. There will be a lot of failure, which very often in traditional businesses, we might not be so tolerant. There's also got to be a lot of disciplined experimentation because you really can't be doing a whole lot of stuff at the same time. So one of the ways is to start looking at creating some open innovation team within the organization, which keeps scouting for opportunities, which gets startups, helps the startups and internal teams work together, goes out and starts talking about what you're doing in various startup markets and becoming more visible. But given the fact that we also could be having many smaller companies, I would also suggest that industry associations like KMA and the Kerala Startup Mission also explore the opportunity of creating such open innovation platforms. Just like Kerala emerged as a top performer within startup ecosystems. I think there's also an opportunity for Kerala to emerge as a pioneer and one of the top performers in open innovation systems in India. And these are some of the ideas. So as it says in the Rig Veda, okay, let noble thoughts come from everywhere. And I would again assert that in these times that COVID has accelerated everything, if we have to accelerate capability development in digital, then open innovation is probably one of the best strategies that you could look at. So with that, I will stop for now and take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That was a very insightful talk. I'm sure every CEO, CXO, or aspiring CXO, CEO in this room would have takeaways from this very illustrative talk. Before we end, I would like to invite President this is online, so I would like to have Prajit present a specially curated memento. So this is something that we do at KMA. We have a memento that is created right now. This will reach you eventually, but we would like to bring this to you as a token of our appreciation for having been here today.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
What a long day it has been. We started with the need to be able to respond in real time, pondered on a future with ambient computing and what connected and on the cloud looked at what some risks to security are, spoke of everything from the need to create creative students to how, to the spectrum of startup entrepreneurs that we are having right now. We spoke about how the current industry and how non-traditional, non-IT are embracing IT. And our valedictorian just covered open innovation and why startups are now able to rub shoulders with corporates through their very innovative solutions. I would like to invite Mr. A. Balakrishnan, Vice President and Chairman of KMA Digital Summit, to sum up the evening for us.
Good evening. I will not take much of your time. I know that it is already late, but just to conclude the session before the vote of thanks, we start with our Honorable Secretary, IT Secretary. He emphasized on the government and private sector and digitization. He concluded with a wonderful remark. And then it was an interesting session from Google CTO. He emphasized, and there was a contradictory remark subsequently also on the mobile in the panel discussion. He was talking about the number of devices connected and which will encourage us in doing business, etc. Then subsequently, professor said only 50% has good phones. So there was so this is the advantage of this session. Basically, we will get multiple ideas, and and also he is talking about ambient computing, and he is opened up the 4 trillion worth business, which is, I am sure most of you are interested in that. And also the acceleration in the digitization, he highlighted the fact. Ajit Menon really actually highlighted the importance of the security, and he was instrumental in setting up, of course, TCS next 5 years, 75% of their employees will work from home. So he was instrumental in setting up the whole infrastructure. And I am sure that most of us can copy, but unfortunately in our environment, we are unable to perform better because we are not into IT in the financial services. Even banks, people are forced now March. All the sales organizations are struggling. They want to meet people. In fact, I am also getting a lot of calls from the vendors that, shall I come and meet you? So this is what is actually happening. But at the same time, the security and also the importance of the people-driven security that he highlighted. It was an interesting session as far as security is concerned. Then the panel discussion, panelists are here, and it was very interesting. And it is, thank you, Dr. Saji Gopinath, for wonderfully moderating the session. and he has thrown up the lot of things pending. For example, they are supposed to discuss the infrastructure also, but the time constraint, we couldn't do much. But Tapan, the startup CEO, he was actually talking about the algorithm-driven, app-driven ecosystem for the digitization. One is infrastructure, second is the app-driven. And the interesting case study from the great industry of India, from Anuradha Shanai, and also she talked about the amalgamation between new generation and the old generation management, and COVID actually created a more they are gelling together to innovate and digitize the industry. Dr. Kunjaria P Isak really thrown the light, and I think he is torch bearer to this digitization. He is really creating, for example, education today. Even in my family, actually, my son is studying. I am also working from home. My wife is a teacher. And the ecosystem in our home is actually very difficult. We have one. So he has actually thrown the light to that kind of an environment, and also the campus. And thanks to Dr. Zakaria for a wonderful question. And also the cultural transformation. Probably that all these things evolve a new culture. We hope the digitization will create a new culture. And thanks for the wonderful panel discussion. And the last session from Mr. Rajiv Prakash. I like one of the, we are also experiencing that. One is actually the traditional corporates. Traditional corporates in the digitization journey, X tends to NX, whereas the startup and the new generation organization, it is exponential X raised to N. This is a wonderful, I am also a mathematical student, so I like that presentation very much. That is something really, I am also experiencing the same. We have a lot of legacy to overcome, and whereas the new generation, without much of the boundaries, they are actually thinking beyond the boundary, and they are creating and innovating. Open innovation is a wonderful idea, and also corporates and the startup complements each other, so that you will have innovation, digitization at an accelerated level. So, and the case study he mentioned about the Indian Jerkin Export Association, and how a technology organization help a traditional business. This is something actually we can copy in. We also have tremendous amount of examples in Kerala and in other cases. And thank you for all the members for giving these ideas, and it enlightened us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for the very detailed summing up. And I'm sorry to go now, but now it is time for our Honorary Secretary, Mr. Jomon K. George, to propose his vote of thanks.
Good evening to all of you. The curtain is falling over another wonderful event from KMA, this year's Digital Summit. President Madhav Chandran, Digital Summit Chair Balakrishnan, other managing committee members, panelists, speakers, and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Extremely nice that we could organize a program of this magnitude, I would say, in the phygital mode. About 30-35 of us here, and about 100 plus virtually with us, so effectively a very effective phygital program that we had. Yes, for the past many years, we have been doing this digital summit because technology is eating the world, or rather software is eating the world, as we heard. Therefore, we had right mix of everything. The IT Secretary of the State inaugurating this formally, and the spirit that Muhammad Safrala IAS brought in here reminded of something which was discussed in Delhi for NAIMA meeting, where the Niti Ayog's CEO, our former
Amitabh Kant was saying about the initiatives, technology initiatives in the government. And he asked this question, is India Incorporated listening? Are you catching up? So thanks to Safrala IAS he has been here with us as a district collector, now IT secretary. So for those initial remarks and the inaugural address, which really set the tone for this program. And then it was Mitesh on Google India, and his perspective was completely different on the ambient computing and enterprise software cannot be waiting for every 6 months for updation. It has to be continuous learning. So that is wonderful from his side. So thank Mr. Mitesh for his very, very valuable inputs, followed by Ajit Menon, who was, from a TCS perspective, as a company which is now moving more onto the WFH mode, brought all those issues associated, data security, the agonies, and what Mr. Balakrishnan also mentioned about husband, wife, and son being in the same house. And I was wondering why that scar on his back was. Now I understand what had that happened. And for ABK, we all with you, pursue with all the spirit you have, spirit of learning. So of course, but then we are also reminded of what Satya Nadella famously said. In this context, I think it's very relevant that this cannot be a permanent feature. I think we should get over the agony, or rather the problems of mental health and social interaction, and we cannot burn the social capital once the pandemic subsides. I think we should get together in larger numbers. Of course, work from home can happen. Therefore, thank you, Ajit Menon, for that very valuable inputs which are there, which will continue, as one of our panelists was saying, that would continue. And then we had the wonderful panel discussion, moderated, so well moderated by Dr. Sajid Gopinath, who was at KMA last week to share the hopes and aspirations of the Kerala Digital University. Well placed, multidisciplinary learning and so on that. So once again, big thank you, Dr. Sajid Gopinath, for the inputs and very, very seamlessly moderating, asking the relevant questions to the right people. And then it was Mr. Tapan Rayaguru, and from the startup to the scale up is something which exciting. We have mentors out here. So KMA, I think, can play a role collectively, and some of our individual members are also very much in that vertical of helping them to reach the next level of possibilities, next level of greatness, as Robin Sharma would put it. So we are quite happy that you are taking charge of that and giving a global perspective. Thank you so much for your presence and the excellent coordination of the inputs in that. And of course, Dr. Kunjaria Isak has been there all throughout. What a new idea of an interaction and academic perspective. We have the right mix of everything, academics, then the startup moderated by. So thank you so much, Dr. Kunjaria, again. And the other Shano, yes, she said how to manage data with oil or oil with data. Either way is fine. So BPCL has undergone a huge transformation the past many years, the expansion. One of our past presidents spearheaded that, Mr. Prasad Panigar. I'm sure that would have been part of the team, where they also underwent an industry, conventional industry, going into a complete IT transformation, bringing about. So your inputs were very valuable for many of us here, those in the industry as well. So that was a wonderful panel discussion. And then, of course, Rajiv Prakash's valediction was naturally came in as an icing on the cake, giving a lot of real good examples from the startup ecosystem, and therefore that very valuable inputs. Ideally, it could have been not a valedictory session, a full technical session, but you always have the limitation of time. So that is what the wonderful valedictory session. And a big thank you to every one of you, and of course to Sarika for the wonderful comparing or emceeing she has done, and special thanks to Dinesh Thampi, Sujata Madhav in absentia, RJS, you're there, and SR Nair for the introduction of the speakers and the panelists and the moderator. And a big thank you to ABK, A Balakrishnan, who is there for the, did I miss out anyone? Bibu, yes, Bibu is also there. Naturally, Bibu is there always, or Bibu is there. So I thought that Medivision is there. So I thought I could afford to miss his name. So I'm coming to that, Bibu. Yeah, okay, fine. And so wonderful coordination from everyone, and ABK, of course, thanks to the president, the entire team for coordinating, putting all the elements together and make this happen. Before I conclude, let me also make a special mention about the support we have received from our sponsors. Of course, Geojit is a partner. Of course, ABK is part of that organization. India's first internet broker, I would say, internet intermediary in the capital market space. And of course, Medivision, which is Bibu's, is doing wonderful service in this pandemic times. HEAL, that is a prevention protocol, and Sarah, for their support, continuing support for all the KMA activities. So once again, a big thank you to every one of you and to the team here, the technical team, and our own in-house secretariat led by Lieutenant Jojo, Padmakumar, and of course, Prajit, all of you there. Once again, a big thank you from KMA on behalf of the President and their managing committee members. So let's round up now and conclude and request every one of you to stay back for the cocktails and dinner. And on behalf of the President, I would like to reiterate and request the Secretariat to start packing, not now, tomorrow, the mementos which were displayed here and which we have promised that would be delivered physically. Have a great evening. Thank you so much.